We're going to call the meeting of the Morrison County Planning Commission order. Please rise for the flag pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, this is the meeting of the Morrison County Planning Commission. The commission is made up of citizens from the 5 commissioners' districts of the county and 1 county commissioner. The purpose of this commission is to oversee the preparation of the Morrison County land use controls, hear and review applications, and offer recommendations for conditional use permits, interim use permits, subdivision plat approval, planned unit developments, rezones, and other matters to be considered by it under the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance. Our powers are established in state statutes chapters 394.21 to 394.37. Conditional uses and interim uses are recommended for approval upon a showing by an applicant that standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied. All questions must be answered in the affirmative in order for the Planning Commission to recommend approval for a CUP or an IUP. Unless conditions can be attached that bring the proposal into compliance and mitigate the negative finding of facts. Conditions and restrictions may be imposed by the Planning Commission as deemed necessary to protect the public interest. After your public hearing is complete, you may leave if you wish. Okay, we have 2 agenda items tonight. The first one we have is Galston Construction, 3682 320th Street, Cushing. Application for a conditional use permit to establish a storage rental facility located in the point of southwest quarter of southeast quarter, section 21, township 132, range 31, Scandia Valley Township. With Scandia Valley or Galston Construction come up to the podium. Yep, and then make sure you talk into the mic, and just for now, just state your name for the record.
Matt Galston.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to ask the zoning officials, so it'll probably be Amy, to provide her staff report at this time.
I sure can, Mr. Chair. Again, this is an application to establish a mini storage business located in Section 21 of Scandia Valley Township. The ordinance reference for this request is Section 704.5 of the Land Use Control Ordinance, and that requires a conditional use permit for storage rental facilities. Here's a plat map of Scandia Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the conditional use permit request received from the applicant. And then here's a site drawing also provided by the applicant, along with a survey. And here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. And then some oblique imageries of the parcel. Currently, this is a 4.79 acre parcel. Due to its proximity to Lake Alexander, it is zoned shoreland. The parcel does not have frontage on the lake. The applicant purchased the parcel in August 2019, and in 2020 he conveyed 2 splits from the property. The applicant will be splitting a 2.58 acre parcel from the remnant parcel and is proposing to establish a storage rental business on the newly created parcel. A total of 4 buildings is proposed. All of them are 40 by 75 by 25 in size. 4 rental units are proposed within each building for a total of 16 rental units. And then here's going back to the survey. You can see the 2 parcels that have already been split and sold. And then we're talking about future parcel A tonight. Outdoor storage is not proposed, and the applicant has not discussed fencing, screening, lighting, or security within his application. A driveway will provide access to the buildings. The buildings will be guttered, and the water will be directed to a dug catchment area on the north side of the parcel. MPCA stormwater regulations may apply to the project. Access to the facility would be off 320th Street and utilizing an existing driveway entrance. This is a paved County State Aid highway, also known as County State Aid Highway 3. There is a recently permitted storage facility on the parcels to the north as well. The Scandi Valley Town Hall is directly to the west of this property, and further to the west is a residential subdivision. So here's a zoomed out aerial photo with the zoning layer on. And then the parcel we're talking about is outlined in blue. The applicable comprehensive plan goals and objectives is shoreland, goal D1 and D4. Goal D9, and then on objectives would be 9 and 12. Local economic development, goal C1, objective 8. Goal C2, and objectives 1 and 19. Suggested conditions, if this is approved, would be no outdoor storage of items shall occur at any time, and that the property owner shall abide by all stormwater requirements that pertain to the facility. 140 notices were sent. No correspondence was received prior to the public hearing. And then here are your conditional use criteria questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, at this time, does the applicant have anything to add to what Amy said, or any new developments, or state your case on why you want to do this, and
I
just
do
give us
have
some details?
I mean, it's the same site plan, just a little more professional, updated. I can turn in if you guys would like.
Yep.
Kind of a 2D drawing of the buildings. Yeah, I do plan on adding security cameras on each building. Outdoor motion lighting on each building. Have no plans on putting up a security fence or anything like that, no gate. Yeah, I think that's about it. And I will note, I don't know if it matters or not, but back on that survey, parcel D in the northeast corner will be sold this fall. It's actually in the works of being sold right now. So the top two, well, the two that are listed sold are done, of course, and then that D is gonna be sold.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Amy.
if you have an updated drawing, you can certainly
Yeah.
give that to me and we can let
Yep,
the
you guys
planning
can
commission
have
see
this
that.
if you want.
Want to bring that up here,
Sure.
please? Thank you. I'm going to mark this Exhibit A.
Okay, so at this time, I guess I'll turn it over to the planning commission. Any of the members have any questions for Mr. Galston? I don't know, Dave Brucher, you have any questions, or?
No, I think it's pretty clear. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to remind everyone, since we have a lot of people here and we do have people online, to be sure to speak into your microphone.
No, I have no questions at this time.
Okay, Marvin,
I have no questions at this time.
Brent,
I've just got one.
microphone.
I got one question for you. This is going to be serviced off County Road 3, 320th Street. Is that existing driveway? I think Amy had it up there. Is that where it's proposed to go in?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, they'll all use the same driveway that's already established.
okay.
So there'll be two on the left side of that driveway and two on the right side. And again, I don't know if it matters. I mean, I'd just build one at a time. You know, as one would fill up, we'd break ground on a new one,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Amy?
Just to circle back on that, I did touch base with the county engineer regarding that driveway, and he did not have any issue with the use of that driveway for the storage facility.
Okay, thank you. Dave Stish.
Yes, Mr. Chair, question for the applicant. On this picture up above, could you explain what will be remaining for trees that will screen the units from the surrounding property, or is it all going to be clear cut? What's going
No.
to happen there?
Okay, so the driveway to the left, there's a existing concrete slab that will be
You could go up there
removed.
if you'd like to.
Go up
Point it
there.
out.
Well, then he can have a microphone.
So,
Oh, yeah, no microphone.
we're gonna put one here, no no trees will be disturbed. One will go here, no trees. I mean, maybe some minor brush, but no mature trees. And then the other two will go here and here. And there will, probably half of this tree line will get removed. You know, from the road, halfway will be left, and these will be taken out. Probably 8 to 10 trees.
Could you point out where parcel B is on that?
Parcel B,
Yeah. You were keeping parcel B? I'm not sure.
can't remember which one. I think B is sold, isn't it?
See it.
Oh, yeah,
see
B,
us.
yeah.
Go back one. Yep.
So, it's about, right at this big pine tree is where the split is. This is A, and there's B here. It's hard to tell with the trees, but, the lot line is pretty much maybe 10 feet in where this tree, these pines are, where it starts.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you should get back to the mic before we ask you any more questions.
Very natural low area right in here. I just proposed it, if needed or necessary, we could do a pond there to hold the water runoff, if needed. It would be very simple. I mean, we could divert the water there the way it is now too, without really doing nothing. It's
And your future plans for parcel B?
undecided.
Excuse me?
Undecided, possibly sell it or keep it. Not sure yet.
Thank you.
No more questions?
Yeah, perhaps a little explanation on your drawings here. Yeah, the building, does it have overhangs, 2-foot overhangs? What does it have?
No overhangs.
Okay.
No.
What kind of construction, pole construction, or,
Stick built, be
okay?
a stick built, steel siding, pole barn steel siding, steel roof, yep.
Colors?
Undecided, but, you know, I'd like to get, a nice looking building, have all four match, have a wainscoting on it, matching garage doors, so it looks nice. Yep,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Okay, Matt, so what made you want to pursue this avenue and go down this way to put storage buildings in, or?
Oh, I've been a building contractor in the area for 17 years, and we put up several buildings throughout the years for people. I just see the need in it. People want it, people need it, in the lakes area. And good friend of mine, Steve Doucette, put that one up last year. I mean, he's full already. The units just to the north of my property, they're full. I mean, I just see a big need for it. And I didn't really want nothing to do with the mini storage, people want, all these toys are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, I just don't want to deal with mini storage. Maybe, someone wants to put an RV in there or a big fish house, or maybe just have it as a personal garage for whatever reason.
Okay, now you mentioned up to the north there that was a little lower area that if we needed to, you could have a pond, but, without us being there looking at the landscape, does everything slope that way, or does some of it slope to the road, or can you explain that a little bit?
It all slopes there.
It all slopes
Yeah,
there?
yes.
So if you put rain gutters on these buildings and shoot it that way, it would just gradually go there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Dave.
Sidewall height, so you can accommodate RVs, what are you thinking?
I'm planning on 16-foot sidewall heights, 14-foot door.
And,
Height.
and overall building height would be?
Under 25 feet.
Under 25?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions?
Mr. Chair, did you get much feedback from neighbors? Did you?
Yeah, actually, throughout the whole summer, that's kind of why I procrastinated on doing this until now, but I talked to several people throughout the summer and just kind of brought it to their attention, and everyone thinks it's a great idea. Yeah.
So, yeah, we sent out, 140 notices, and nobody responded back, so I guess no news is good news, right? I don't know, so.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a good fit for the area,
Okay, anybody else have any more questions for the applicant? Otherwise, we'll open it up to public comment. Okay, if not, we'll open this portion of the meeting to public comment. If anybody would have anything to say for or against this applicant, now would be your time to do that. And if you so do, please go up to the podium and speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. Don't look like there's going to be anybody, but I'll ask it 3 times. Is there anybody that would like to go on record in this public comment portion? I'll ask again, anybody else have anything to say from the public? If not, I'll ask my 3rd time. Anybody have anything from the public to say to this applicant? Hearing none, we'll close this portion of the meeting to the public input. So now, I don't believe we have anybody from the township. Our county engineer already weighed in on the road, the driveway, I should say, in the road, and it didn't sound like that was an issue. So I guess you guys ready for our criteria questions, or you guys have anything else that you'd like to ask or add? We'll move forward to our criteria questions.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Stish.
there was 2 conditions considered by or to be considered, proposed by the staff. No outdoor storage and stormwater control as needed. Might be MPCA, might be a condition we just put on that regarding stormwater. I mean, the applicant has stated that it should flow towards this low area, but perhaps we need some outside comment on that, or also said that he'd leave trees for screening, but I don't know if that would be a needed condition. I would guess not, but might be something we consider. So, but as we move forward in answering the questions, keep in mind conditions that might help you answer the questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our criteria questions. And I'll start with myself on the first one. We'll do a little different order tonight. The use will not put excess of burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. I would say no, it would not put excess of burdens on the roadway. County engineer weighed in and said that the road was fine, the approach and driveway would be fine. Utility-wise, there's no burden, it's just the storage. You're gonna have some traffic in and out, very minimal use of power. There's no school close. So I would say that, yes, this request would not put excess of burden. Dave Brucher?
No, it will not. You had the count, excuse me. No, it will not.
I agree with Mr. Chair, what you stated like that, as the county engineer weighed in on it.
Brent, do you have anything to add?
Nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Stish, you have anything to add?
Question for applicant, sewer and water, is that needed at all? You providing hydrants or
No,
facilities of any kind?
no.
Okay.
Okay. We'll move on to question 2. We'll start with Brent on this one. The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area.
No, I don't think it'll be detrimental. I think it will be an addition to the area. I think with other storage facilities in the area, this being a lakes and recreational area, There's development surrounding this area. 140 notices were sent out. No concerns were raised. So I don't believe that this will be a detriment to the use and enjoyment of other property folks. They'll have places to potentially store recreational equipment, snowmobiles, ATVs, campers, that sort of thing.
Okay. Mr. Stish?
I have nothing to add to that. Thank you.
Okay. Marvin, you have anything to add?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Mr. Brucher?
No, I have nothing to add either.
Okay. The only thing I'd maybe like to add is just that, it's kind of covered with trees. Yeah, there'll be a few, but they're still going to be, kind of blocked by trees a lot. So that's good. So, it's not going to really impede on what it looks like already, per se. So we'll move on to question 3. We'll start with Dave Stish on this one. The use, in the opinion of the Planning Commission, is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment. Groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by this proposed use.
Well, the only concern, I would think, related to that question would be surface water, and I think that can be taken care of with a condition, and the applicant has stated that he plans to prepare for that with guttering and a catchment area. Yeah, we've recently permitted other storage facilities in the area, and seems to be a compatible use for that area. And lack of input by anybody, neighborhood seems to agree. We're kind of setting zoning precedents here by, shoreland doesn't really describe much as to what can be allowed and not allowed. So I guess in the future, we kind of have a little area here that is agreeable to the public for storage. Might be something we consider in the future.
Okay, thank you. Marvin, you have anything to add?
Mr. Chair, the only thing, like I said, he offered to put a pond in if needed, and I agree with this here. So if we put the conditions on, as Dave Stish had mentioned, I believe this would be what we're looking for.
Dave Brucher, you have anything to add?
I have nothing further to add.
And myself, I'm good with the reasoning so far. Brent, do you have anything?
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to question 4. Marvin, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate that proposed use.
I believe it is. It's consistent because on the back side of this will be, or is already, a storage facility. It is needed in the area, and as 140 notices were sent in, nobody was against it, so it will fit with this.
Okay, thank you. Dave Brucher, you have anything to add?
I have nothing further to add.
Myself, no, I have nothing else. Dave Stish?
Nothing to add.
Brent?
I might just add, in the lakes area, a lot of those lots are sometimes 50, 60, or 100-foot lots, and most of it is consumed by the actual structure itself without any additional storage in the area, so I think it's a complement there.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to question 5. Dave Brucher, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or the water plan of the county.
No, it's not in conflict. That's set aside as a lake area, recreational area, and I think that the questions, I'm lucky I got this one as the last question because the previous 4 questions kind of fill that one in, that this falls right in with the plan for that area.
Yeah, and I'd kind of agree. It's not in conflict because, there isn't a big, there'll be some water, but it's not like much more watershed than what's already there. with the buildings being guttered, with maybe a condition put on that Soil and Water looks and sees if he needs a pond or not, or whatever. I think it definitely fits into the comprehensive plan and the water plan. So I think, yes, it's fine. Dave Brucher. Or Dave Stish, sorry, my bad.
I thought I'd already answered.
Yeah,
My turn.
yes.
Okay, thanks. Well, looking at the goals that are listed in the staff report, goal D1 is thoughtful, deliberate, balancing environment and social and economic goals, certainly done here. And the neighborhood seems to think so. Attractiveness and character of the neighborhood, already some storage units there, seems to fit in well with residential, according to the 140 no-shows. Stormwater control, we've addressed that. Protecting surface water, again, as Clint mentioned, no change really in the water that falls on the property or how it's diverted, unless there's a concentration in one spot. But I think a plan, or at least a review of the plan by Soil and Water would be important. Local entrepreneurs that we need to support them, and a strong, very local economy. Stays right in our backyard, more of these rental fees. And, yeah, so I think consistent with the comprehensive and water plan of the county.
Okay, thank you. Brent, do you have anything to add?
Nothing further.
Marvin?
I have nothing to add.
Dave Brucher? You answered this one already. Okay, before we vote on these questions, I'll just talk about a little bit, so it maybe helps when you're voting, if we're thinking about a couple conditions. I hear one of them is possibly putting a condition on that they check into water diversion or a sediment pond or something like that. I guess my thoughts are is we just have them work with Soil and Water, and the condition would be whatever they recommend. Is that what you were thinking, Mr. Stish?
Yep. Is that specific enough, Amy? Okay.
Would that be fine with the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, you guys all good with that?
Yes.
Yeah, then what else? do you have
The
now?
two that were recommended by staff, do you have them up there, Amy?
Okay, no outdoor storage of items shall occur at any time, and then property owner should abide by all stormwater requirements that pertain to the facility. You're fine with all that, that's
Yes.
self-explanatory, okay? Okay, well then we'll move on to our questions. So number one, the use will not put excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. Clint Cather and myself is yes. Brent Lindgren,
Yes.
Dave Stish,
Yes.
Marvin Treadle,
Yes.
Dave Brucher.
Yes,
Okay, number two, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant to the area. Brent Lindgren,
Yes.
Dave Stish,
Yes.
Marvin Treadle,
Yes.
David Brucher.
yes,
Clint Cather and myself is yes. Number three, the use in the opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment. Groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Dave Stish,
Yes.
Marvin Treadle,
Yes.
Dave Brucher,
yes,
Clint Cather and myself is yes. Brent Lindgren.
Yes.
Okay. Question four, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. Marv Treadle,
Yes.
Dave Brucher,
yes,
Clint Cather and myself is yes. Brent Lindgren,
Yes.
Dave Stish.
Yes.
Okay, question five, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or the water plan for the county. Dave Brucher.
it's not in conflict,
So,
yes,
okay. Clint Cather and myself is yes. Brent Lindgren,
Yes.
Dave Stish,
Yes.
Marvin Treadle.
Yes.
Okay. So all the questions were answered in the affirmative, so somebody have a motion?
I would like to, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we would forward this to the commissioners and approve of it with the 3 conditions we had specified.
Okay, is there a second? Dave Stish. Okay, motion's made and seconded to recommend that this recommendation for approval to the county commissioners. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Well, I'll just go, sorry. Myself is yes. Dave Stish.
Yes.
Brent Lindgren.
Yes.
Marvin Treadle.
Yes.
Dave Brucher.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess this will go before the county commissioners on what date, Amy?
Mr. Chair, that'll go before the county board on November 9th at their regular board meeting. You do not need to be there, but you certainly can. I will bring the request on your behalf. So that is the date that the county board will either grant or deny the permit. Okay?
Okay. So what are the 3 conditions again? That I get in contact with soil and water or vice versa?
Yep.
No outdoor storage?
No outdoor storage, that you abide by all stormwater requirements, and then that you'll have a Soil and Water Conservation District review of the site for stormwater.
So basically, one's pretty close to the same.
Right.
But okay, any other questions or anything? Feel free to call Land Services between now and the commissioners' meeting. And otherwise, good luck.
Sounds good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Yep, thanks. Okay, get my other papers here. Apologize. Okay, our next item on the agenda, we have the Autumn Antlers Property LLC, 1280 180th Street, Long Prairie, Minnesota, 56347. Application for an interim use permit for a licensed residential treatment center located in point of the northwest quarter, southwest quarter, and southeast quarter, section 31, township 130, range 31, Parker Township. Would the applicant please come forward and state their name for the record?
Troy Hoekstra.
Talking to Mike.
Excuse me, I'm Troy Hoekstra. I'm one of the partners of Autumn Antlers.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, just so everybody knows, we got a big crowd for this one. Just let you guys know how this is gonna kind of work. You kind of seen the last one, how it went. We'll go through our processes. There will be a time we'll ask for public input. We're gonna limit it to three minutes per person for the first round. We'll see how long that goes, if we offer another 3-minute session or not. Just be courteous. You have to go up to the podium, speak into the microphone. You have to say your name for the record.
Everything to you.
And then direct all your questions to me. So if you guys have questions, you ask the questions, we write them down. When everybody's done, when we close the public input, then we answer all them questions, okay? So just so you guys got an understanding of how the meeting goes. So there will be a time for everybody to speak. So at this time, then I'll ask Amy with staff report.
All right, Mr. Chair, this is an application to establish a licensed residential treatment center located in section 31 of Parker Township. The ordinance reference for this is section 604.7, and it does require an interim use permit for licensed residential treatment centers. Here's a plat map of Parker Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the interim use permit request received from the applicant. And then a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And then here's some imagery of the property. Autumn Antlers Properties LLC owns 7 parcels and a total of 335.02 acres. And here is a figure with all of the parcels highlighted in blue and yellow. In 2006, a conditional use permit was granted to 3 parcels to establish an outdoor recreational facility, primarily for guided deer hunts within the borders of the property. Autumn Antlers raises deer on site for this purpose. In 2010, another conditional use permit was granted to the property to include 2 more parcels. The property was purchased in 2019, and the new owners applied for and were granted a conditional use permit amendment and interim use permit to include 2 more parcels and establish a limited rural business, specifically an event venue, to host gatherings such as corporate retreats and small weddings. That request included the addition of 3 modular homes for overnight accommodation, in addition to the main lodge that offers guest rooms. And here's an aerial photo of those 3 additional guest quarters with the main lodge. The facility is currently in compliance with state food, beverage, and lodging requirements. This license is administered by the Morrison County Public Health Department. The applicant is proposing to convert the use of this property to a licensed chemical dependency treatment facility called Autumn Hills. The existing lodge building would be utilized for offices, meetings, and dining. The existing modular homes and an additional 3 structures would be utilized for patient sleeping rooms and detox space for a maximum capacity of 52 patients. And then here is that aerial photo again with those additional buildings and their location in red. The applicant has engaged the services of Ascension Recovery Services, we'll call that Ascension from now on, for the development of the facility. Autumn Hills will function as a transitional facility after initial detox. Patients would come from a 30-day detox facility located in Hibbing. At the Autumn Hills facility, patients would receive 90-day residential treatment. After the 90 days at Autumn Hills, the patient would then transition to a sober living facility in St. Paul while reintegrating back to career life and attend regular meetings. Although detox is not the focus at Autumn Hills, there must be detox capacity in the case of relapse and or need for close medical supervision. The clientele this facility will cater to are ones that have the capacity to self-pay or that have premium insurance coverage for drug and alcohol treatment services. Rule 25 patients will not be accepted at the facility. Rule 25 patients are ones that need chemical use treatment and qualify to have treatment paid for using public funds, also referred to as the Behavioral Health Fund. Financial eligibility for Rule 25 has 2 parts. If a person does not have 100% insurance coverage and whether they meet the financial eligibility guidelines. This is determined by the federal poverty guidelines using household size and income. The facility would be open 24 hours a day, however, night staffing would be minimal. Daytime staff traffic to the site would be higher than nighttime travel. Vendor drop-offs would occur during daytime hours as well. Group events would be extremely rare. Visitors are limited to 2 per week per patient. The food and lodging services provided by the facility would continue to be under local licensing jurisdiction by the Morrison County Public Health Department. Public Health does not foresee any licensing issues. The chemical dependency treatment services and facility are regulated and licensed by the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Minnesota Chapter 245G refers specifically to chemical dependency facilities, although many other statutes apply. The oversight of these facilities focuses on procedures, treatment plans, and staffing requirements. And then here's a summary of Chapter 245G, just to give you an idea of the types of things that they're looking at when they're licensing a facility. The parcel is served by County Road 218, which is 180th Street, and it's a paved county road. The existing entrance will continue to be utilized. The facility is set back approximately 800 feet from the road. Uses on adjacent parcels are primarily rural residences, crop fields, feedlots, and forest land. 18 residences are located within a 1-mile radius of the facility. And then here is a map with the red circle around is a 1-mile radius, and then the yellow dots are residences. In 2016, Texas A&M University and Montana State University conducted a study called Substance Abuse Treatment Centers and Local Crime. It focused on impacts on a county level. In summary, the study concluded the following. An additional SAT, Substance Abuse and Treatment Center facility reduces drug-related mortality by 0.5% annually. The estimate implies a decline in a county's annual drug-related mortality costs. An additional facility in a county reduces municipal-level felony-type crimes by 0.1% annually and reduces municipal crime costs. The study results provide support for the idea that there are broad-based benefits of SAT facilities in terms of public safety. This evidence is in contrast to not in my backyard arguments that have been used to hinder attempts to expand access to SAT through additional facilities. However, an important limitation of the research design is that it identifies effects of having an additional SAT facility in the county, which could mask effects for areas in a county that are nearer versus farther from such a facility. That full study was provided in your packet. The applicable comprehensive plan goals and objectives is agriculture A1, objective 6, goal A2, objective 1, local economic development, goal C1, objectives 1 and 8, goal C2, objectives 1 and 2, also objectives 7 and 19. And then this is just a reminder to the Planning Commission that this is an interim use permit, and so you do need to have conversation about an end date on the permit. 28 notices were sent. One comment was received prior to the public hearing, and I'll read that. This was a phone call received from Jessie Evans. She stated that she lives less than a quarter mile from the site and owns the Busy Bee Daycare. She is concerned with the clientele that will be attending the facility. With HIPAA laws now, will she know if any of the clientele are sex offenders? She is concerned that this will hurt her business. She has 4 families that have already told her that if this goes through, they are withdrawing their children from her daycare. She does not think she will be able to stay in business, and losing a daycare facility will be detrimental to Morrison County. She stated she is concerned that this will change the quality of the area, and she knows a lot of her neighbors feel the same. And that was the only comment received, Mr. Chair, and then here are your interim use and criteria questions. Mr. Chair, I'll also note that we do have the Director of Morrison County Social Services here. We have the Morrison County Sheriff here. We also have 2 members from the Ascension team online via Teams, so they're available for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. And then just for the record, also, I received a call from Yvette Inez a day or 2 ago with questions about how the meeting is run. Kind of told her how the meeting process runs. Basically told her if they had it, her and her group, if they had any documentation or evidence or something that they wanted to talk, and that it'd be helpful to leave an extra copy with us for the record. So I just wanted to make that aware of for the record that I received a phone call from her. Okay, so then at this time, I'm going to ask the applicant to go ahead and give us your $1 million speech.
Just $1 million? Amy, do you want to just do this since you're
Yeah.
hooked up? Do you want to just do the PowerPoint? Is that all right? Yeah, and I'll just say next slide.
All right, give me
See, I thought everybody was here to argue over the storage, but I guess not.
All right, let me just bop over to this. Oops. All right.
Yeah, we can go to slide 2 right away if you'd like. So I just wanted to give some perspective on, how we got here, and
Make sure you're talking into your microphone.
I wanted to give some perspective on how we got here and what decisions went into this application today, because there's a little more to it. So my business partner, John Munson, and I purchased this business in 2019. And we've just encountered a number of issues with the business, both regulatory and within the business itself, and have come to the decision that this is not a sustainable effort for us. Even just recently, the DNR, just a couple of weeks ago, placed a burden on our ability to transport deer in and out of our facility. And as much as we can grow and provide deer for folks to come and hunt, we do rely on animals to be brought to the property. And that order is going to be in effect unless otherwise notified until April of 2023. So in essence, right now we're relying on a number of outside vendors to sustain that business. And that's just one recent ruling that is detrimental to this. There's been numerous others that would be an entire another seminar if we had the time to talk about it. So we started an effort about 8 months ago. I started an effort about 8 months ago to identify a potential reuse of this property. Now that we're into this thing and own it, what can we do with it if we decide that hunting deer, elk, red stake, et cetera, is not in our future? We've had numerous meetings with any number of groups that range from big brothers, big sisters, boys and girls clubs to turn it into a camp, different church groups that might be interested in converting it to that use. And all of those types of groups essentially were happy to have us give them the property, but there was no real financial mechanism to make the thing sustainable economically. After a lot of those efforts failed, and we probably dug into another 30. I'm just giving you the ones that I recall that we did a little deeper dive on. I started thinking about doing the rehabilitation because I've actually had 2 of my siblings go through rehabilitation many, many years ago and go on to lead very successful lives. My youngest brother went through rehabilitation at Project Turnabout in Granite Falls and is now a police officer at the state capitol. So it tells us that if people have an opportunity, they can turn things around. They just need that opportunity. So with that personal experience, I began researching companies from all over the nation that manage or help co-develop businesses like this, because I have no background in rehabilitation or behavioral health services. We had identified roughly 15 companies throughout the nation. We had numerous phone calls, Zoom calls, conference calls with those 15. There were 3 very clear leaders out of that 15 that rose to the surface. Ascension, who is with us today, is one of those companies. We did I'll use the term deeper dive with those 3. We asked them to travel to our facility, and in turn, we did some traveling to some of theirs. And because of Ascension's connection to Minnesota and the relationships they have in this state, we made a decision and a business arrangement to move this effort forward with them. And so we have a contract in place with Ascension and have Bill Coleman and Seth Delinsky, who are executives with that company, on the phone, both Minnesota guys with a significant history in our state. And we'll be talking about some of their resume coming up. If you want to advance the slide, please. So who is Ascension Recovery Services? And when I'm done, I'll let those guys brag about themselves a little bit. But this is what you'll find out about them. They're on the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies in the United States. They're the number 1 company on Inc. 5,000 in the state of Virginia. They manage behavioral health centers for some of the largest East Coast organizations and reputable universities that have these services, including the University of West Virginia and a $750 million campus, one of the, or if not the biggest in the country, for the city of Boston. And so we're excited about that. They're operating in 23 states. They're licensed in 40 states. I talked about Bill Coleman and his deep roots in Minnesota. He's a former executive with Hazelton, Betty Ford Clinic, which we're all familiar with, and prior to that, worked in one of the counties down in the cities, and I'll let Bill discuss that, where he ran all of the behavioral health services. He brings 36 years of experience to the table. Seth is another gentleman with similar experience and was involved in running a number of facilities in St. Paul that he will talk about. So they are a nationally known company, number 1 in West Virginia, and we have an opportunity to bring national capability to Morrison County, to this facility. If you want to go to the next slide. I want to just touch base. You can read the detail about Doug and Bill individually. Doug Leach is the CEO of the company and founder of this company. He's a gentleman that we've grown to respect significantly. He's been through rehab himself, and upon emerging from that successfully, founded this company and has done all these wonderful things that I have already talked about in terms of growth and their rankings nationally. Very intuitive gentleman with a background with Ernst & Young in the accounting field, and brought all those resources with him when he decided to make this his life's passion. Bill, there's not much to say about Bill other than he's really the godfather of this industry. That's how I view him. 36 years of experience, got a master's degree from Fordham University, director of clinical services, or director at Hazelton Betty Ford Foundation. Before that, managed substance abuse and mental health services for Dakota County Social Services in St. Paul. He's been a chief clinical director, as you can read, and overseen facilities with as many as 300 beds. Comparing that to our facility, which would be 52. You want to go to the next slide? So why convert to Autumn Hills Behavioral Health Care? Got some basic statistics on the state of Minnesota here. And I'd like you to really focus on these, because these are affecting your neighbor, your brother, your friend, someone you know. There's an epidemic happening in the United States and in Minnesota. 1 out of 10 people with a substance abuse disorder in our country and in our state are receiving treatment for one reason or another. In 2020, we'll be talking about overdoses, but in 2020, non-fatal overdoses, in other words, people who have overdosed but then were able to get medical care in time to save them from overdosing and dying, in the state of Minnesota last year, 2020, last year, was 7,980, and that's just for synthetic opioids and heroin. And this is all a result of the boom in the opioid pain medication, where the drug companies came out and told all the doctors that these opioids were not addictive, and ran with them for years, and now trying to get our population weaned off of those now that the doctors realize that they're an addictive substance. And this person who is now connected to that drug chemically doesn't have an ability to get it, because the doctors aren't just prescribing it anymore. And again, I'll let Bill and Seth talk more about that. But that's where the heroin and the fentanyl come into play. One of the statistics that depressed me and surprised me was on the bottom of the page, which is misuse by 8th graders through 11th graders. So we're talking about kids in junior high through juniors in high school. In just a short span from 2013 to 2019 has gone from under 1% to almost 5%. And these statistics are a couple of years old, so I'm guessing by the time we get new stats in 2021, it'll be higher than that. So the idea that we have 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, 5% or more, misusing prescription medication, opioids, is a sobering statistic. And to put that in comparison, in the year 2000, there were 54 opioid deaths in Minnesota. 2019, 427. 2021 is expected to set a record high. And that's just opioids. If you want to move on, Amy. So Autumn Hills, who are we? And who are we not planning to be? We are planning to be a facility that will accept commercial insurance and self-pay customers. So who is that? I've heard in meetings I've had with neighbors and from others, there's somehow this connection between somebody who is going in for chemical dependency treatment and this idea that everyone is a criminal or a pedophile or hates senior citizens. That is a fantasy. That is there may be small instances here and there, no more than the general public. I'll let Bill and Seth make that point a little better than I can with their own statistics, but that's the boogeyman that doesn't exist. So Autumn Hills, we've made a decision and will not be applying nor accepting what Amy had already discussed, which is Rule 25. And I'd like you to ask Bill and Seth about that as well. But Rule 25 are folks that need state pay to enter rehab, And there's a number of reasons why we don't want to accept that. It's not that we're too good for it, or we're trying to run a resort here. It's none of those things. There's a segment within that population that is just something that we're not prepared, nor do we want to deal with, nor did I feel responsible bringing that into this facility. And again, I will let Bill better describe that population for you. So a point that I would want to make is that patients at Autumn Antlers are free to come and go at any time. I know in one of our neighborhood meetings there was a comment about somebody going crazy and jumping the fence, and I said, time out. Nobody's got to jump the fence. If somebody wants to leave, they're going to pick up a phone and they're going to get a ride, or they're going to drive their own car out of the facility. We aren't a place where someone is standing in front of a judge being ordered to come and participate. That's not who we are. So we would be working off a network of referrals from doctors, insurance companies, and other very established medical channels. And again, that will be expanded on a little bit further in our presentation. So statewide, the majority of our people who seek treatment will be 18 to 35 years old. That's just a basic demographic, so they're typically younger. And then what I have seen is it tends to jump a generation, and then you see another little spike of folks who are in that 45 and older category. So somewhere in the middle of our lives, we find a 10-year window as a population to maybe separate from that as a percentage. And then on the bottom, you can see the graph of the drug overdose. I just wanted to reiterate that point. So if you can't see the actual numbers, you can see the increase over the last numerous years. Amy, if you can move us forward. So some common myths about behavioral health facilities. And I've been hearing all of these since we sort of went public with this. And the first is that this is going to cause an increase in crime in my neighborhood. And again, that goes back to, for me, I've read all the studies. There's numerous studies out there. We've cited them. They're everywhere. You can Google them and find 50. I have not found a study that shows a connection between a facility like this and the customers and patients that we intend to serve and any increase in crime in a neighborhood. In fact, the studies show just the opposite. If anything, it reduces. The other concern that some would have, probably more in an urban area, is that their property values would be affected. And again, the research that we have brought forward and looked into from very reputable sources is that there is no impact to neighboring property values in a facility like this. Certainly not more than if you've got a place that's shooting guns, at least in my opinion. So, next slide. Autumn Hills and our neighbors. I started this process a few months ago, and that was a conversation with Amy and myself where I said, we're thinking about this. We've been working on this for 8 months. This is something we're considering. But before we take a next step or make an application, I want to meet with all of our neighbors and talk with our neighbors. And the reason I did that is when we bought Autumn Antlers, there was a sentiment with quite a few that facility in its inception had sort of been shoved down their throat to a degree. And we heard that. And I have developed good relationships with my neighbors. And some may be here in opposition to this, and that's okay. So we had an initial meeting on September 29th and a follow-up meeting on October 20th. And I went through much of this same, who are we going to be? We're not doing the Rule 25, that whole thing. And then to listen to them and their concerns. And outside of, just sort of the I don't want it, some of the concerns that were brought forward had to do with excessive lighting. There were questions about, when would there be traffic during the day or night, some of those kinds of things. And we have a pretty good volume of traffic already. Nobody knows that because they aren't focused on it. And I don't know that anybody is going to notice that unless they focus on it with this property. So what we have tried to do is balance this project. So we need to add these 3 buildings because we need a men's and women's dorm. They would be single-story, and there would be a detox building, which is a necessity. There are people that would be coming here maybe on short notice that may be addicted to something that has to be medically detoxed. The idea of just sort of laying in a bed and suffering and grinding through is not possible in certain cases, depending upon what the nature of the chemical is. And again, I'll let the experts talk about that. And the reason we need to do that is we need to convert the lodge and all of the existing rooms in the lodge where we sleep people into offices. So we're going to have medical claims people and psychiatrists and doctors and RNs and counselors and any number of people here that we'll talk about shortly. And we need a space for those offices. So these new structures, again, would be single-story. They'd be built up along a tree line where they would not be visible by any neighbor, and we would be mindful of the lighting so that we're not, put it in one of my neighbor's terms, I couldn't have said better, lighting up the hillside, which is certainly not what we want to do. And the last thing that we offered, or that I brought to the table in our last meeting, was if there were any neighbors that would want to, with me, form a committee, a neighborhood committee. So I thought if I could find 4 or 5 or 6 people that were either for or against this that would want to meet with me and the on-site staff once a month, once a quarter, whatever is needed, we could have this ongoing dialogue. And I had an interesting comment come out of that, which is a very thoughtful comment, which was, so we have this committee. What can the committee really do? And I said, the committee can do exactly what you're doing today. If you're engaged in this and somehow this has become a negative experience for you to a degree that it's no longer acceptable, you have the ability to come here and raise holy you-know-what. And that's more power than you can get from any organized meeting with written capabilities. And so it was my attempt to communicate this thoroughly up front. We had our staff drive around what we thought was 13 of the properties within the neighborhood. We have obviously missed a few, but the word spread. And held these meetings before we made a decision to run with this, and have offered to do this committee. With regard to the daycare, I am aware of that. That came up in the first meeting and it came up in the second meeting. What we have offered and followed through on, we offered to arm the Evans family with the facts of what this is going to be, and again, what this is not going to be, so that they could give that to these parents. The last thing I would want to see, of course, is to have them impacted. And that letter had my contact information on it, and I offered to go to all of their homes and meet with those families individually. And I heard them say there was 12 families in total that they provide daycare to. I may be wrong, but that's the number that sticks in my mind. I offered to go and meet with every one of those neighbors and visit with them about exactly what this is. Because I think if someone's going to, personally my opinion, I've got 3 kids, if I was going to pull my child from a daycare, I would want the facts to make that decision. And as we sit here today, I have not been called, I have not been emailed, and no one has contacted me to sit down and have that conversation. So that's disappointing. I expected to have involvement in that. The last thing that we offered is we're going to be proposing 50 or more employees here. And I'm going to bet that some of my employees are going to need daycare. And I had committed to them in our second meeting that if they were willing to talk to me about this, we would pay for those spots and reserve them so that we could offer them to our employees. So if 4 people quit the daycare, we would fill that void and keep those selfishly, but also so they weren't impacted, so that our employees might have that opportunity. And we haven't had any communication on that after the meeting. So those are the things that we have done relative to Autumn Hills and our neighbors. Next slide, please. So the new structures, we talked about that just a little bit. We're going to use the existing lodge for office space, meeting and dining space only. We can't use them for sleeping. Currently, the lodge sleeps about 20, and then we have the bunkhouses which sleep another, well, it depends on how friendly everybody wants to get, but right now we can sleep roughly 40 people on the property. So we're proposing to increase from 40 to 52. We just need the added buildings because we're taking the lodge out of inventory. We're going to have a men's and women's dorm that we think each will sleep about 18, and then a medical detox building that would sleep 10 to 12, and folks that are in that space would be there for just a short period of time. This would be a $2 million improvement to the property in terms of the real estate that we would need to build. We would have invested, including that, to about $4.5 million in total into this property, and it's our intent to hire all local contractors and subcontractors. We've reached out and tried to make some inroads in those areas, and if this is successful, we will do that. The one point about the facility, we're talking about 52 beds. These facilities operate kind of like hotels relative to occupancy. And the experts at Ascension have told me that we should expect to run at maybe a 70%, 75% occupancy. So although we have the capability of sleeping 52, it would be more likely in that scenario that we would be at maybe that 40 number or slightly less. Next slide. This is a site plan. You can see the existing lodge. The bunkhouses would be at the bottom of the page. And then the two buildings. Those buildings are in the process of being revised by our architect, and they will be smaller than what is shown. So right now you're seeing two buildings that are 56 by 108 and one that is 54 by 50? I can't read that. They won't be that big. They'll probably shrink by 10 to 15% just because of the efficiencies and the plans as those are designed. So what is our staffing plan? I've heard from several people, from my wife to pretty much everybody. How are you going to hire people? There's nobody to hire. How are you going to get them a driveway out here? It won't be easy. It's no different than any other employee. You have to first create an environment and a culture people want to work at. And Ascension is that type of company. So we have confidence that they will be able to do that. Just an overview of the general plan is to draw from Bill and Seth's connectivity in this state, which is significant. St. Cloud State has an RN and a counseling program, and so we would want to be drawing from those programs, hire one or two senior staff, and then bring in recent graduates, which is what most employers are doing that require degrees. We would implement a recruiting effort within a 60-mile region to include St. Cloud, Brainerd, Alexandria. I think one of the more impactful ways that we can draw is by our pay. This industry and our facility will just pay more. If you're an RN in Minneapolis or St. Paul, you can get paid about the same working here as you can there, but imagine your cost of living. If you have a home in Long Prairie, Little Falls, in the countryside, whatever. So better pay, better benefits, but at a significantly lower cost. And I think that is a pretty good combination relative to what someone can offer. Next slide, please. So how many jobs are we talking about? We're talking about 50-plus high-paying jobs. If you look at what our payroll total is expected to be at the bottom of the page, which is about $2.4 million annually in new wages into this county, and those 50 jobs divided into that, you're over $50,000 per wage per year. There are varying degrees, of course, from whoever the clinical director is or program directors who are making six figures down to maybe a part-time maintenance guy. But that is the annual total. And we do expect to employ those 50 people. So they would range anywhere from, Amy.
It's okay.
Anywhere from RNs, clinical therapists, LPNs, case managers, recovery technicians, dietary, a medical director, insurance claims people, and the list goes on and on and on. Okay, we're good. So my conclusion, which you were anxiously awaiting, we believe in this because it's allowed by zoning, and we believe it to be ethical. and it will be run with integrity. And I think if you talk to maybe even some that are opposed to this, they will tell you that we have run Autumn Antlers and been a good neighbor. We believe that we are operating an innovative, effective, and well-run business that we are entrusting to a national company that otherwise would be very difficult to get that type of expertise in our community. We believe we've been responsive to our neighbors, although some may not agree. We think we've created a platform to hear their concerns and create a platform with the offer of this committee and other things to have an ongoing dialogue and be able to communicate with us effectively. And we believe we're creating long-term value here with this business and the people we intend to hire and the increases in the wages and other financial impacts. We think that this makes sense during a public health care crisis. And there's a picture of a whole bunch of the people. I will tell you that Bill is on the bottom, second in next to me. He's a lot better looking in person than he is in that picture. Seth would be on the top, second from the right on the top. And I've got them here, not to give a presentation necessarily, but I wanted them to be here to answer any and all questions that relate to the detail of what this is, and more importantly, what it is not. See, I told you, much better looking than the pictures. Well, at least Bill is. I don't know about Seth. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Okay. So I guess we talked about that. So would Bill or Seth, one of you have anything to add to this, or you just want to wait for questions? Or if you guys have anything to add, now's the time to go for it.
I think we had thought that rather than take time, talking about ourselves or the project, is really want to get to the questions that people might have. That's really what we're here for. I can briefly say that, just because I do think it's relevant, is that previous to joining with Ascension Recovery Services, I was the director of a 62-bed coeducational inpatient treatment center down in Owatonna, Minnesota. We had very similar makeup of land. We were on about half the acreage, but we had neighbors within a similar proximity, and so I might be able to speak a little bit with our relationship with the town and with our neighbors, and any potential impacts that there may be concerns about. I think I'd rather just give the time back to the people who may have questions rather than speak more.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you have a comment on that? Or just...
I would just add one thing, that were a program coming in my backyard, I would be here as well. I think that it's appropriate for people to have concerns anytime any business is coming in. And I think we will be able to, or at least will attempt to, alleviate those concerns. But I think it's great that there are people there. They need to have an opportunity to express their thoughts and feelings, and we need to hear those. And so I just wanted to say that, and I will, wait. I do have some other thoughts, but I'd like to get into questions, and then anything else, that we want to add, we'll add at the very end of that.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I guess I'd ask the Planning Commission if you guys have any questions. Who's going to start? Marv?
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions. One, obviously, would be the security of the clients to keep them on the site. Do you have anything lined up in case, runaways or whatever like that? What would you do with it?
No, we are not a secure facility, and people are free to come and go as they please.
And I can speak a little bit to that as
Seth,
well.
fire away.
So it's a relevant question. It's only, you know, the reality of it is that, as Bill said, this is an at-will facility. So if someone wants to discharge from the program, they let us know that they want to discharge, and we give them a ride as to where they want to go or help them find a program that's better suited to their needs. As far as security goes, I think that is a relevant question because, you know, we have people coming to get help here and, you know, living at the facility in your neighborhood. The Department of Human Services really regulates all security and safety at facilities like ours. So, you know, the rounds that are done alone would be, you know, there would be eyes on rounds at every patient in the facility every hour of the day. 24-hour nursing coverage if anyone should have any medical issues. Again, someone wants to leave, they're allowed to leave. So the idea that someone's going to have to break out and flee through the neighborhood to get away is not really a thing, because that's not how facilities like this operate. As far as us keeping tabs on the patients that we do have willingly in our program, we do that every hour.
And I would add one, well, if I may.
Go ahead, Bill.
That in addition to, you know, everything Seth just talked about, we will also have electronic monitoring throughout the facility so that, you know, the grounds are electronically monitored. We'll know where people are when they're there. The gates will be monitored. And we take security very importantly. And really, it's for not just for the community's sake, but for the individual's sake, you know, particularly in winter. Well, you know, somebody can't just walk out and be okay in the middle of winter. So we're planning for every contingency to ensure that we have some real capacity to know where people are and when they are there.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Marv.
Mr. Chair, I've got another question for you there. And to curtail off this, do the clients or will any of the clients have a past history of behavioral violent history coming into this?
Seth or Bill, you guys you want to comment on that?
Short answer is certainly those in recovery may have criminal charges in their past. But the thing that a lot of people might not realize is to be able to be granted admission into a facility like this, there's a rigorous admissions process and an assessment that's done to make sure that they're appropriate for the facility at hand, right? So any criminal history would be looked at and seen if it would be, you know, relevant to the environment that we have offered. Sex offenders, for example, would not be admitted into our facility. We're a co-educational facility, so sex offenders is not something we'd be able to work with. You know, people with violent, physical crimes in the past would not be accepted into our facility because you're going to be in a facility with 40 other patients. So you know, people have a history of crimes or have been convicted of things because of their alcoholism and drug use. That's something that could be, but we assess each one of those case by case to make sure that it's appropriate for the surroundings that we offer.
How often do you assess them?
Before admission. So they to be granted access to the program, they have to go through that clinical assessment.
Okay.
Which is thorough, and we do what's called continuous assessment. So we're monitoring and reassessing someone on a daily basis.
Okay. So the next question I have in this was regarding the daycare, and you know, a quarter mile away from that, and it sounded like you tried to work with them, and if there's any way you can convince them of the security and continue to work with them that they're not a threat to the children. Or you sounded like you were possibly finding clientele, or is there a possibility of compensating them for their possible losses here?
Yeah, we had talked about that at the first meeting. You know, I didn't anticipate that, so it kind of blindsided me. I think there was a misperception on what my original comments were, and they may have well, some may have taken that as me trying to, pay him off or something. That was certainly not my intent. My intent is if they lose 2 or 3 or 4 customers, I would want to reserve those places, and we would pay to reserve those places for our employees.
Okay. Thank you. I have no other questions at this time.
Okay.
Mr.
Dave Brucher?
My question is that my understanding in these facilities is that one of the bigger problems is drugs coming in. How do you keep visitors? How do you monitor that? Because I've got family members that have volunteered at Teen Challenge,
Oh, yeah.
a very effective program. And I will say that they've got a facility in Brainerd, and they've even gone to methadone now. And my understanding from communication with the Brainerd police that there's been no issues at all in the community, even with a facility like that. And they're taking court-ordered people there.
Yeah.
But the question is, a big problem that they have to monitor all the time is make sure that these guys' buddies don't bring them a bump. How
Right.
do you keep that out?
I would tell you first, before I let Bill and Seth handle that, my niece went through Teen Challenge, so I understand how effective that is personally. But Bill or Seth, do you want to handle that?
Yeah, the first point of contact for any patient coming in is going to be an admission process that would actually be taking place in one of the outbuildings, the bunkhouses as they were called, prior to entering any of the residential facilities or the main lodge itself. During that intake, all luggage, all personal belongings are searched to make sure that there's no contraband, no things that are not allowed in the facility to be there. Independent of that, another possibility for someone bringing substances in would be through visiting hours. All visitors would be vetted, would be not allowed to bring any bags into the facility, wouldn't actually even be able to bring cell phones. You leave your baggage in your car in the parking lot. There are a number of safeguards around that, perimeter cameras as well to see if there are the car that might come by slow and try to throw something over the fence or something like that. So also is regular searches of the property and potentially the facility by our canine friends. The facility I worked at, we had monthly, the drug dog came in. Her name was Lucy. She was fantastic. She worked with us for years, and she helped keep our facility safe. So, it is a possibility for drugs to be brought in. But again, with that every hour round, eyes on patients, if someone somehow becomes under the influence of something, we're going to find out about it quite quickly. But even better than that, we always try to ensure that the program stops any of that from happening in the first place through a very good structure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Brent.
Got a couple of questions. One might be for Amy. Maybe now's not the time, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. What happens to the previous IUP and CUP that we went through in 2019 with this facility, and does it stay with, or is ownership changing, or is there an end sunset date with that?
Great question. Mr. Chair, a conditional use permit is a land use right that's granted to the land. So the conditional use permit part of this, which is the deer hunting and that outdoor recreation part, is a land use right that will run with the land. If that use is discontinued for more than a year, then that sunsets. So a conditional use permit that is discontinued for more than a year, then that just kind of takes care of itself. The interim use permit would certainly, that's also a land use right, but as you know, there is a sunset date, and I believe that condition was placed that until they no longer own the property. So because it's still held under Autumn Antlers Properties LLC, that IUP still could be valid. However, again, if the use ceases to operate or continue for more than a year, then that sunsets that as well. I know, and I think I'll let Troy speak to this. There has been some discussion about that. As you know, this facility does have a liquor license right now because of the business that they're in. And then also there are some deer still on site. And so I think this might be a good time for the applicant to discuss kind of that transition out of that business.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say.
I suggest we keep the deer but lose the alcohol.
I was just going to say that. Well said. I'm pretty sure we're not going to renew the liquor license. And in terms of the deer situation, I don't have an answer for that right now. I wish I did. I'm going to have 100+ or more, mostly does and fawns on that property, and I can't bring them anywhere. And so we are really struggling with that outcome. I can bring them to another state, but I can't bring them anywhere in Minnesota. I don't personally have an interest in being involved in that business any longer. I've lived that dream, and that dream is over. So, yeah, no booze, and some way, somehow, I think the deer will be moving on.
Mr. Chair, still had a couple more
Yep,
questions.
go ahead, Brent.
Again, probably to Amy. What county oversight is this proposal going to require from county resources? Specifically, I'm trying to understand the burdens that the county might entail with this.
So from a zoning standpoint, it would be whatever, if this permit is granted, from a zoning standpoint, it would be really keeping track of adherence to whatever conditions might be placed on this. In other capacities, in other county capacities, there will be oversight by the Morrison County Public Health Department, just as it is now, for the lodging, food, beverage, and lodging portion of this, which they're already administering. And then the other oversight, direct oversight then comes from the State Department of Human Services. And so that would not be tapping county resources, it would be the state. So those are the three direct oversights that would occur. Anything that happens alongside of that would remain to be seen as far as from a law enforcement standpoint and or tapping resources as far as it was alluded to, maybe having the drug dogs sweep the area on a monthly basis. That would be something that would possibly be arranged.
Okay, thank you. Another question maybe for Bill or whomever regarding what EMS response do you see coming to this facility or what medical conditions would prompt an outside responding agency to come?
Generally speaking, there are not a lot in any of our programs, a lot of EMC activity. However, it's always possible. Someone could break a leg, or any other medical crises that might require that. So we anticipate having a relationship, with local hospital and EMTs and everything else. So that they're aware of what we do and our services. But typically, we are not a labor-intensive program for emergency services.
And additionally, because we will have a medical detox facility on site for our patients, anything having to do with the acuity of the detoxification or the drug or alcohol use that they've been doing will be handled internally on site.
All right, thank you.
Got it, Brent?
For now.
Okay. Dave Stish.
Yeah, for question for whoever, why there? Why in the middle of kind of nowhere? No support facilities nearby. When I think of a treatment center, I think of them closer to a municipality that has the usual things like hospitals, professionals close by, other infrastructure that would be helpful. Bill and Seth, do these things work out in the middle of nowhere? Or do they work better there? Why there?
Seth, you want to tackle that with your experience with the one down by Owatonna?
Yeah, quick answer is yes, they do. Often, our clientele will come from throughout the state of Minnesota. There are a substantial number of offerings, in the state of Minnesota, but there are not too many offerings that are quite like this, focusing on the commercial insurance. Very nice facilities, and not to mention the land itself that this facility is lucky enough to be on. It's a beautiful place to go and get treatment and find help and start to fix your life, right? The surroundings are gorgeous, so I think it's going to be a very attractive place to go for people throughout the state. We're not close to resources. You're correct in that, but all of our aftercare, the next steps that our patients will have will be throughout the state, going back to the communities that they come from, or going to a community like St. Paul, Minneapolis, where the recovery communities are so large. So that's my thoughts on that. Is yes, they do work.
I would just add and emphasize the point that Seth brought up at the end. Personally, I find this location to be excellent, and the main reason is the surrounding. We envision having meditation walks through the property and exercise opportunities, and people come as a retreat. And so in this environment, they don't have a lot of the distractions that a lot of programs do. Remember, Hazelden in Center City is in the middle of nowhere, with nothing, with a huge campus, and they work very well. Somebody that doesn't want to be, as you say, in the middle of nowhere will opt out. But somebody that's interested in the programming that we're providing, the therapeutic environment that we're providing, and the actual environment of the location will self-select towards that.
Thank you. What do you envision the property looking at like someday? I mean, we were there and viewed the property when you had the IUP request for the wedding venue, other venues.
Yeah, we're not planning on turning this into a mini city in the woods. We want to do these three buildings for this specific reason and move them up along the tree line that was just, I think, north of the lodge. And that's really the extent of what our plans are at this point.
You had some tillable land that was being farmed.
No, we will continue to farm that. We have an arrangement to have somebody farm that, and we will continue to farm that. We may actually farm more, depending upon what happens with our pens and all of that. So we'll have to see what happens, but the current activities there outside of the liquor, of course, and potentially the hunting will continue. We think farming could be an important part of, and maybe integrate with some of the services that are going to be offered by Ascension.
Specifically deer farming, or?
No, I'm not interested, not that kind of farming. I meant land farming. And we have a neighbor who we haven't met that apparently owns horses, and there's been some discussion of us maybe doing equine therapy and utilizing those pens and those buildings perhaps for that use. But we haven't gotten that far yet. We want to make sure that this is something we can do before we expand that. But I don't know, Bill or Seth, you've got a comment on that in terms of the physical property? Okay.
Yeah, I think you answered it well.
Yep.
The deer facilities are how far from the lodge?
Oh, well across the field, I would say 1/8 of a mile, hundreds of yards. Yeah.
The range, the rifle range, what's
Yeah,
going to
no,
happen?
there'll be no need for that moving forward. I don't see anybody, we're not gonna have any guns on the property, of course, so.
Are you going to hunt the remainder of the deer? Is there going to be an overlap between when this starts
No.
and deer are
No.
hunted?
No, I mean,
Or even housed on the property?
there may be deer still on the property. Like I said before, we've got to figure out that outcome, but to the degree that, we're hunting now, we won't be doing this new application and then trying to run a similar type hunting operation. I mean, there'd be no way to do that. We don't have the facility, we wouldn't have the buildings, wouldn't have any of those things.
So no
And
hunting?
nor would we want to do this if that were the case.
There you have it. Bill just laid down the law, so.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't envision that at all. This needs to be a really top-notch therapeutic environment.
Are there conditions that would be acceptable to you that would make sure that did not happen?
Yeah, we talked with the neighbors about, a number of different conditions that, would potentially be acceptable to us. One of the concerns was, is this thing going to continue to grow? And am I going to be back here in a few years wanting to do 3 more buildings and, that type of thing. So we're certainly open to, discussing any and all options.
Okay, thank you.
To your question, Commissioner Stish, yes.
What was the answer to what question?
You asked me if we would be open to that as a condition.
Yeah.
I
okay.
gave you a long yes, but I wanted to end it with that, so.
All right, I took it as a yes.
Okay.
You done, Dave?
Yes.
You're done? Okay. Have a couple, let's see if I go through my notes. A lot of my stuff got answered already. You guys talked about that this is gonna be, they're gonna basically enter themselves into this program. Okay? So when it's a program like this, you probably have a lot less suicidal things, different things like that, right? Is that still a possibility, that you have stuff like that? I know it's a possibility, but can you just, maybe Seth or Bill talk about, maybe some statistics on that? I don't know.
I don't know about statistics, but I would say it's probably a lower possibility than the use as it is right now, because we're doing such robust clinical assessments on our patients before they enter the program. And it's also a clinical program. So they will be in different types of clinical programming, in one way or another being assessed by professional, mental health counselors 7-8 hours a day. So really, there are so many eyes on our patients in so many ways that it's a very small likelihood that someone would get to that place without anyone knowing about it.
Okay. The only reason I ask, because that'd be one of the reasons why you would probably need to have outside EMT or something like that. So that's where I was kind of going with that.
Sure. And to clarify, if someone expressed or exhibited suicidal idealizations, we would transfer them. We would drive them ourselves to the appropriate level of care to be assessed on that level for a hold as needed. Right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Troy, this is probably for you. So basically, the building infrastructure, the only thing that's going to really change from infrastructure is them 3 buildings, correct?
Correct.
As far as adding, there'll be some stuff tore down or
There's
whatever.
going to be some subtraction there.
Yep.
We've already
Okay.
eliminated a barn and a silo, and we're going to be removing another building that's on this site as well to accommodate parking and then just reduce structure.
Okay.
So I think we're given 3 and we're getting 3, from a holistic perspective on real estate.
And that infrastructure is approximately 800 feet from the road, if I.
Yeah, I would say roughly.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And then, I guess one more question before we move on here that I had. You talked about forming like a community board or working thing. Did any of that form? Any interest in that?
There is some interest. Yeah, I mean, I haven't We were, sort of grinding through some of the bigger questions that you've already asked. But I know a couple folks that would want to participate. And I think it would be a good idea to do that, and maybe, if we could get 2 or 3 of us, maybe more would become a part, or we may prove that we won't need it at all. That'll be determined.
Okay. Okay, we're getting real close to moving on to public comment, but at this time, I would like Brad Vold, if he has anything to comment to that, if you'd step up to the podium and maybe just what you see from the county, maybe if the county has any concerns or just what your thoughts are in general.
Mr. Chair, before we move that far, is there a possibility of having a condition with the neighborhood committee and being overseen, like from public health or whatever, as part of before we vote?
Maybe we could think about it. We're a long ways from that yet, though, Marv. Yeah. Yep.
Hi, good evening. I'm Brad Vold. I'm the Director of Public Health and Social Services. Well, we met with Troy and Amy a couple months ago. He came in and talked about this facility. I've been in contact with Ascension because we are going to be required to do, well, we're not required, but they're going to request a letter of deed from the county when it comes to submitting that to the Department of Human Services. The clientele they're looking at serving really doesn't impact the county a whole lot, just because of the nature of health plans and there are other ways they're going to get their referrals. We work with many treatment programs across the state with our residents, so it's not uncommon that we will work with any of those treatment programs. So generally have no concerns. We actually don't currently have any residential treatment programs in Morrison County. I looked at the surrounding counties that border us, and all of them have at least one, and some have up to 14. So this would be something new for Morrison County from a licensing standpoint.
Okay. Anybody in the board have a question for Brad quick before he sits down?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
my question to you, Brad, would be, these referrals that come here are said to be coming from Hibbing after their initial 30 days and transferred, is that correct?
But we're not approved yet in Hibbing, but what we are doing, and the points that I've made to the neighbors, is this is what we are calling a full continuum of care. So we will have 3 different facilities that are potentially interactive with each other. One in Long Prairie, which would be more of a residential. We'll have one in Hibbing, and then you go to the long-term sober living in St. Paul, which would be up to 6 months. And one other correction, I know we've talked about 90 days of residential care. That's a maximum amount of time. From what I'm hearing, the average is 35 days to 45 days. So just making a couple points on that.
So my follow-up would be to Bill and/or Brad, maybe one after the other. How would this benefit Morrison County residents with their treatment needs?
Until they determine their admission criteria and decide how all of these folks are going to be paid for, it may not have any impact on Morrison County residents. There are a number of our residents that have private insurance, I'm sure, that could seek treatment here. But, that's again yet to be determined until admission criteria is determined and kind of what that's going to look like, so.
Okay, and that same question then to Bill and Doug. Or Seth, I'm sorry.
Seth, do you want to follow?
Yeah, really, it's not even needed to have really good, the top tier health plans to enter a facility like ours. We plan to be in network with all the major health insurance providers, so that needing commercial insurance would be a requirement of admission. But the plans vary, and most plans these days do have mental health services attached to them. Certainly at this point, behavioral health and addiction services.
Seth, Troy, just for a to help the group, could you mention a few of those insurance companies so folks can kind of make a connection to who would probably
Yeah.
provide that?
The major players in Minnesota, I think about 35% of the market is Blue Cross Blue Shield. Tearing down from that, you have Preferred One, you have Aetna, you have
Health partner.
Optum Health Partners.
Medica, is
So
Medica one?
Medica, yep, Medica.
So if folks would have any of those insurances, they would be admittable potentially to our facility.
You done, Brent?
For now, yes.
Okay.
Good
Dave Brucher.
I have a question directly relating. Now, Morrison County Social Services does pay or subsidize some substance treatment in whatever one they put them into treatment. And what is the maximum that Morrison County Social Services pays per month for this kind of service?
There's a 22% cost share for those who are on Consolidated Fund or Behavioral Health Fund, which pays for those that don't have insurance and meet the income guidelines. I would say right now the state isn't very up to date on those, but we're gonna average about $6,000 a month in treatment costs for those who can't afford to pay.
Yeah, okay, and now that's the next question, is that what is the average cost per month for a resident at your facility?
We're still building, oh, go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, well, I think that it really depends on what the contracts and partnerships negotiated with the insurance providers. I would imagine that if someone were to come in and say, I want to self-pay for services, you'd be looking at anywhere between $400 and $500 a day.
So in other words, you're looking at almost $15,000 a month.
Or more.
And you are in a growth,
Okay.
and you are in a growth industry. So that's quite a system. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Stish.
question for Brad. You've reviewed the application pretty thoroughly. We spent a lot of time on it, but we don't see these things very often. We're new to the jargon, new to the proposal. Did you see anything in their plan that concerns you, that looks far-fetched, unattainable, conflict with other uses on the property?
That is not my expertise. I leave that to Amy, so I can't speak to that. But from a treatment environment, what they've said earlier about just the location, I can't imagine the treatment environment would be a good use in terms of those that are looking for this kind of care. It's a beautiful area. It would give people that kind of solace and meditation ability, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brad.
Thanks.
So at this time, I'm going to ask Sheriff Larson if he'd maybe come up and have a comment or two, and then maybe if we have any questions for him, he can answer them. State your name for the record, sir.
Yes, sir. Sean Larson, Sheriff of Morrison County. I'll just do this. I'll just answer questions, if that's okay.
Yep.
If there's any questions for me.
Anybody have any questions for?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
A couple of questions for you, Sheriff. What is the primary response for EMS in this area? Is it North Memorial? Is it Gold Cross? And where would they go? And is there first responders in that area as well?
Yeah, so EMS first response would be, it's actually right on the line. It would be Randall Fire and Randall First Response. I believe you're looking right around that 16 to 19 minute response time. Little Falls, obviously, we're probably about a 22-minute response time. That's just going non-code, but if we're gonna go in an emergency situation, we'd shave a few minutes off that. And then, of course, we got Mayo Ambulance, Little Falls. But then they're so close to Long Prairie, they're just east of the county line of Todd County. So Todd County would actually be a quicker response time. and/or Long Prairie PD, depending on where we're situated at the time of an emergency. So my biggest thing is, as long as there's rules and regulations in place, I guess I'll make a comment to that too. I'd just like to know, we talked about, I think there was some talk about these patients can come and go. I didn't know if there's any regulations as to when they can come and go, and at what point would you guys get involved as an administration to basically say, we're going to cut this person because they're not following the rules and regulations in place? And the only reason I'm coming up with that is because as law enforcement, I think those are the types of calls we're going to get, whether it's suspicious activity, you know, if it's after 10 o'clock and they're free to come and go, we're probably going to get some calls.
Sure.
Visitors, I know we talked about that. I think it was 2 visitors per patient. And I guess my question is, are there timelines for that as well? And with that, I'll just shut
Sure.
up and listen.
Thanks for being here to answer some questions, and that is a good question. And I think maybe an important clarification is when we say our patients are free to come and go, they are free to admit. We want them to at will admit. They're not forced to come to treatment. And if they want to leave treatment, they can be discharged. That is, you know, and we will help them through that process. They don't need to escape the grounds. Aside from that, they're not free to just come and go throughout the property, walk out, go into town, and come back. They stay on site, and we have eyes on them throughout the day. Even if someone is going to take a walk through the woods and you know, and have some time, they need to sign out of the building, get permission from their counselor to do so. The first 72 hours that they are with us, most likely to be on grounds restriction, which means they would stay in buildings. So yeah. There's no just kind of coming and going. We know where they are all the time. So their activity throughout the property is highly monitored and permission based. As far as you know, potential responses, I can think of when I was working down at Boterre and Owatonna. Usually the only times that we had to bring law enforcement on site. And I can think of one time where there was a fight and between 2 patients, and we, you know, we're planning to discharge the patients that were involved. It's another, you know, firm rule in treatment facilities. If there's any violence whatsoever, you're going to be discharged from the program. And one patient refused to leave. And once he refused to leave, and you know, we weren't going to drag him out kicking and screaming. We called the authorities to help us with that process. Other than that, you know, very little needs for a call on site.
Thank you.
Okay, Seth, one more. I think one question that Sheriff Larson had was the visitors too. That's going to be a set time, right? I think that was one of his questions.
Yeah, visiting would be set times, usually focused on the weekends. Sometimes, depending on your location and proximity to where your patients may live, you would open up one evening time. So an example would be from 7 to 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night, visitors would be allowed. Visitors, again, would be vetted. They would be on an approved visitor list. They would not bring any baggage or extra items into the facility. And the visiting location would be in a certain part of the building. Weekend visiting is usually a bit more expansive when patient's family can come down and actually spend some time with them. This is limited and usually done in groups. So if we have visiting twice a day on a Sunday, or once on Saturday, once on Sunday, say half the group would get their visitors to come on Saturday and half the group would get their visitors to come on Sunday. So we're not, overcrowding the property with visitors. Every patient is allowed to have 2 visitors at a time. And again, those would be between specific hours. No family member would just be able to show up on site and pop in to say hi. It happens at approved times through approved passes.
Okay, thank you. Marvin, you have a question for Sheriff Larson?
Yeah, Sheriff Larson, I think we all know firsthand enough individuals that have had opiate addictions and the problem with it. And where do we put these people? Where do we retrain them? And I want you to elaborate how frequently you deal with the addictions and opiate abuse here in Morrison County, and it doesn't have to be in real detail, but I think you run into it frequently.
Yeah, absolutely. Opioids is a problem, not only in Morrison County, statewide, nationwide. We've had our share of overdoses here locally in Little Falls. Just this last summer, we've had a handful just right in a row. So it's something we're constantly dealing with. We have two members, two deputies who are assigned to Central Minnesota Violent Offender Task Force, and they're dealing with this on a daily basis. And of course, there's other counties that encompass the Violent Offender Task Force, so we're traveling as well with all the investigators to different jurisdictions, if you will, in Votive. And on a daily basis, we're dealing with methamphetamine, we're dealing with heroin, and now, as of recent, the last few months, fentanyl. And we're seeing a lot more of this fentanyl, which is obviously deadly. Some of our deputies have actually been affected by this just because it's just a granulate that goes airborne. If you're able to sniff it or you get it on your skin and it absorbs, it can be deadly. So to answer your question, daily basis, we're dealing with it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Sheriff Larson. If you do want to just stick around to the end of this meeting in case we have some questions come up with public comment or something, that'd be great, but otherwise, thank you. Okay, board, have any other questions, or should we ready to move on to public comment? Ready to move on? Okay, so we're gonna move on to the public comment portion of our meeting. So we're gonna ask that if the public would have something to say, that you come up one at a time. Go up to the podium, state your name for the record, and we're gonna ask that you guys keep it to 3 minutes. There's a lot of people out here. We definitely wanna hear from you, but we'll be here all night if we keep going, so I guess if you guys whoever wants to start out, come up, state your name for the record, and then if you have questions, please ask your questions. We'll write them down, and when all the public comment is over, then we'll answer your questions, okay? So, go ahead.
I'm Chris Guast. Before I go into this, I just want to make one comment about Troy and dealing with him, with the meetings that he held for the neighbors and everything, and I can't say enough about the man. He's a great guy. And I think would do a very good job at running this facility. But I'm going to go into what I would like to say, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. But I'd like to say that I'm uncomfortable with the idea of this proposed facility coming into rural Minnesota, an area that's primarily used for farming and outdoor recreation, rural residents that choose to live in a safe and remote, peaceful setting. Knowing how much today's society is in need of a facility like this, I've asked myself many times, what are the issues that have been keeping me from accepting this facility with open arms? The fact is, this facility, such as the one that's being proposed, does not belong in a rural setting, far away from services that a city or a town can provide. I know we've touched base on this, but emergency response time is a big concern of mine, such as fire departments, police, sheriff's department, ambulance services, medical centers, or hospitals. This location, we're many miles from all of these services. This issue alone makes me the most uncomfortable, not knowing as a neighboring resident, but as a parent of 4, and I have 3 kids at home yet, it touches me uncomfortably just knowing what's going on over there. I know it's a rehabilitation center, but there's no way of knowing how the patients at this facility are going to respond to the program. The patients at the facility may not be violent criminals. They might not have criminal history, but the ones being treated here have broken the law by using illegal drugs or abusing prescription drugs or alcohol. Even the most upheld citizens would be unpredictable while being addicted to any of these substances. Water and sanitary use is another big concern of mine. It's a detox clinic. There's a detox clinic that's getting proposed with this facility. What's the sanitary waste plan for this facility? I really don't believe that a subsurface septic system is going to handle the chemicals that are coming out of these people's bodies, let alone just the simple sanitary waste. water usage. Just definitely some questions that I have and how that would be addressed. The future and impacts of this facility is another concern of mine. There's many questions between the balance of a commercial facility in a rural agricultural community. With commercial development pushing further into the rural areas, the farming communities are definitely feeling some pressure. And each year it's getting more and more limitations for their use of their land. If this facility is permitted, what does the future hold for the expansion of the surrounding farms? Will this limit in any way the expansion of their farms or feedlots? I know property values was talked about, and I know there might not be any research for property values, but I'm just going to say this. Being in construction and being around residential sales in the area, if you're riding to a property that's for sale with a realtor and you drive by Autumn Hills Rehabilitation Center and turn into the next driveway left, which is mine, what are your thoughts going to be? Once again, just giving you guys some examples of why a facility such as this should be in a more appropriate location for its intended use. I feel that there's a great need for this rehabilitation center, and I feel that that Ascension and Troy are going to do a beautiful job of running it. I just don't feel it's appropriate in that location. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
My name is Dan Deering. First, I'd like to thank Troy for bringing us all together here this evening. Troy is a professional developer. He has money, backers, lawyers, and an intimate knowledge of how this system works, and have been working on his presentation for many months and has much support. I do not have these advantages, and neither do my neighbors. We are common people. Again, my name is Dan Deering. I live across the road to the south of Autumn Antlers in Culdrum Township. Autumn Antlers is in my front yard. All I have to do is look to the north. Historically, I've hardly noticed Autumn Antlers. Trophy hunters didn't make a lot of noise. There was not a lot of them, and their season was limited. I noticed Autumn Antlers most when the driveway lights were left on all night, and I assume that was for hunting guests. I have lived here for over 20 years. There was no Autumn Antlers when I moved in, and I watched it develop. I went to 2 meetings with Troy. The meetings I thought were as much informational as they were a sales pitch. At the last meeting, one of my neighbors asked Troy what he thought the negatives of this facility were. Troy said increased traffic, noise, and lighting, and worst case would be if someone were to jump the fence. Troy is proposing a facility with 50-plus employees, space for 50-plus clients, visitors, vendors, and support. This will be a significant increase in traffic and noise from what it is currently and what it has been historically in our area. Lights will increase. It will be on all night, every night. I assume security lighting will be needed on all buildings at the proposed facility. When Troy said jump the fence, I thought, is this my pasture fence on the way to my house, being my farmstead is most visible from Autumn Antlers? This will be an unsecured facility and there will be no other fence. Addictions make people do things they normally wouldn't do. The hope is clients would be voluntary and wanting help, but there will be clients that will not want to be there. I'm also concerned about the property value, what this will do to my property value and the ability to sell my property. If families won't take their kids to the daycare down the street, do you think a family is going to want to buy my farmstead with a rehab facility in the front yard? There are many reasons why we choose to live in a rural community. If you live in a rural community, I don't have to explain. The reasons can be summed up, I believe, in one phrase: a very high quality of life. And I find a real irony in the fact that Troy's proposed facility would be trying to educate people on a better quality of life, meanwhile compromising our neighborhood's quality of life. This facility would be a radical change for our community. Is it a proper fit? I also have deep concerns about the safety, health, and welfare of my family and community if this facility opens. Now they are only concerns, well, once the facility opens, that is reality. Troy has the same negative concerns as the community, but Troy doesn't live here. No one is jumping a fence at Troy's house.
Thank you.
Okay, so you gave me 3 minutes. I'm going to try and make this short and sweet. We'll see if I can do it in 3. Okay, so my name is Jessie Evans, and I own and operate Busy Bees Childcare down the hill from Autumn Antlers. My childcare is well within walking distance from the game farm. With this new business idea that Autumn Antlers has been throwing around, it has been disturbing my business. It was brought up that there was a letter written that I did give out to my parents. I think for them, that's when it became very real, and that's when I start, one after another, getting letters in from parents saying, I'm not comfortable with this, which I can't blame them. I have 3 young daughters myself. So I am a parent-aware rated childcare that has been in business for over 5 years. I'm established. I understand that there is a shortage of chemical dependency rehabs, but we are currently facing a childcare crisis. I do have copies of the statistics of the need of childcare. These statistics are from June 2020. The spots needed for childcare in places like Flensburg are 13 spots for kids under 5, and all 13 need childcare. Little Falls has 611 kids under the age of 5, and 190 of those kids need childcare. The list goes on. Swanville has 88 children under the age of 5, and 47 of them need childcare. All of these places and more I have families from. And this data is from First Children's Finance. I would like to point out that I am not a babysitter. I am a child care professional who educates children. I have value in the business. My business is important too. I grew up in this area. I have roots here, and this is my home. I live here because I can raise a family and have a successful child care business here. If this goes through, I will not feel safe living here or raising my young family. This location is so far from law enforcement that I do have my concerns. I think if this gets passed, it will change my quality of life and my child care. Ultimately, I won't have a business. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Jesse, one question quick. How far away do you live from this?
I live a quarter mile, literally right down the hill.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi there, my name's Gabrielle Guast. I am a neighbor to Autumn Antlers right now. We just moved in back in April, and quite honestly, from a personal point of view, if I'd known that that was there, I wouldn't have moved there. So you can't tell me it doesn't make a difference in the value of our property or trying to sell it. That kind of ties into the property values, and I did do a little bit of research, and it's really hard to find anything on this because these facilities are so new. And not that I have anything against the facilities, I also agree that this is definitely a need, and their statistics obviously are showing it. I'm a teacher, I totally get it, helping the kids, especially with drug-related issues. But there was a few statistics on some realty out in West Virginia, and I know one of their facilities is there, Ascension is there, and it said that the homes that they looked at within a 1/8 mile of the residential treatment center lost 8% of their values when measured against comparable homes farther away. If the rehab center treats opioid addictions, home values fell up to 17%. So it's hard to dig up some real facts, though, because it is new. There's stuff from like 2004, but there's nothing for today. Things have changed, obviously, since then. I also have a letter from Greg Stedman, who's from Ralphie's Real Estate Company, and he wrote on behalf of him, I have been practicing real estate since 2004 in Morrison County and Stearns County. I conduct real estate business daily in the leasing and sales of agriculture, commercial, residential, and new construction. It is my professional opinion that the rezoning and establishment of a drug rehab facility would have an adverse effect on property values. Establishing a drug rehab facility will limit the number of buyers interested in purchasing a farm in an area that is now not a farm community, which I feel like is impeding on our Morrison County residents who want to be here. Allowing the drug rehab facility would provide a roadmap to other property owners or investors in the area who may want to change from agriculture to any zoning desired. And that's from Greg. I did have a few questions. I had a huge thing written up, but I'm like, they were pretty much answered. You guys did a great job with your presentation too. So I was just wondering, I know you mentioned that the assessment begins as far as a criminal background on some of the clientele coming in, and I know that that clientele is coming in, it sounds like, from the Hibbing facility, and it sounded like there's more people coming from the state of Minnesota. That just makes me wonder, how is that benefiting Morrison County if people are coming in from other areas to use this facility? On top of it, you did talk on staffing. Staffing is coming in, it sounds like, from Alexandria, Brainerd, St. Cloud. How is that really helping Morrison County? Also, if the people that are coming in that are using, have these disorders, are they from Morrison County? It doesn't sound like they are. So that was just something that kind of made me think a little bit. I know there was a comment about the beautiful land that we have out there, and it is beautiful, and there is a reason why I moved out there and we moved our family out there, is because it is beautiful. And I feel like I come from an agricultural background as a child, and I know the importance of it, and I feel like a lot of people in Morrison County feel the same way. We're out there because we love that land. We're out there because it's in us. It's in our backgrounds. I don't think it's fair to bring something in like this from somewhere else. And yes, it's corporate and it looks amazing and it sounds awesome and you would be helping people. I don't think impeding that onto our land and where we are is fair to us. And that's all I have to say.
So, I'm Cheyenne Armstrong. I myself work in behavioral health care. I specialize in early intervention and high behaviors, so I definitely know what it's like to work with people. I know how desperate and aggressive people can become when drugs, illicit substances, and behavioral and mental diagnoses are involved. I kind of want to piggyback off what the last person just said. Even our sheriff said that there's a big problem with drugs in the county. If this is going to be in our county, wouldn't it only be fair that our citizens would be benefiting from this? Another questions I have, what is the business's COVID plan? How does this benefit the county, as I said? During the slideshow, the phrase typically younger clientele was used. Was this just for statistics' sakes? Or will there be minor services? I also had some concerns when it was stated that recent graduates were going to be used for this facility. I've trained people who haven't been in this field, even if you have a degree. If someone hits you, it's pretty hard to deal with. And if you're sending someone in without adequate training, it's just a recipe for disaster. I know it was also mentioned that if a person was in a suicidal ideation crisis, it was mentioned that they would be driven to get help. How does one expect to get an escalated individual in a crisis into a car? Are UMRs supposed to be used? Rights restrictions? Also, how will they keep an eye on more than 300 acres? Doesn't seem that plausible. Thanks.
I'm DJ. I live just north of Autumn Antlers, about a mile and a quarter. I've been in the water and sewer, wastewater industry for over 20 years. My concern is, how are they going to handle sewage that comes from the facility? What is the sanitary waste plan for the drugs and chemicals leaving the patient's bodies? For this facility to house up to 52 plus visitors, patients, and 35 or so or more employees daily, can a septic system be capable of filtering drugs or chemicals from the waste before entering the groundwater or eventually our watersheds? Or what type of wastewater treatment plant do they plan on having? With people possibly detoxing synthetic drugs like meth from their system, medical waste, and the many different cleaning chemicals being used at this proposed facility. Have you ever heard of a treatment center of this size that wasn't on city utilities? How are they going to ensure that the water quality will not be affected or subsurface water? What measures will be in place to continually test to be ensured that the water is not being affected? Will these results be made public? How much water is estimated that this facility will use? How will this impact the water supply in the area? And with a facility of this size and nature, I do not agree that a rural septic services can provide the safe and environmentally friendly means of supplying and treating the water and waste needs to be in such a magnitude. Chemicals, cleaning or otherwise, kill the needed bacteria to break down waste. To my knowledge, an environmental review by the MPCA has not been done, and it needs to be done before moving forward. I contacted Catherine Coyne from the MPCA yesterday, and she seemed very shocked that no one from the county or persons proposing this project has contacted the MPCA regarding this matter. This is very serious and should not be voted on without contacting the MPCA and doing the environmental review. And an example, Little Falls needed to improve their wastewater treatment plant down by the golf course. Just to improve it, they had to add $17 million worth of upgrades to it to meet the state standards. And the dog food plant that moved into Little Falls, they could no longer expand. They needed the utilities, wastewater utilities. And I just don't feel that we need to be an experiment for something like this. And there is shoreline on this property that needs to be thought of. And the other two properties that they're proposing, do they have city sewer and water? That's all I have.
I'm LaDonna Erickson. I reside in Randall, but my dad is just on the outskirts of that mile radius from Autumn Antlers. One, my dad was not invited to any of the open houses that he had to explain any of this. My father could not be here tonight because of a surgery, and he is 75 years old. He has lived on that property where he is currently for most of his life. I would say maybe 20 out of the 75 years he has not lived on that property. He's used to not locking his doors because he feels safe, and I've talked to him. He does not feel safe if this facility would go into place. I drive by it daily, almost, to go to my house. I look for deer every day, skunks, raccoons, all the creatures out there. I would also fear that I'd have to look for a person that didn't want to be there and couldn't go through the proper channels or was wanting to find that next fix and out there searching for it. And one of the questions I have is, okay, they were saying about having a committee and saying if there's a problem in the future that we could go there and basically raise Cain. Okay, is anything going to get done with that? If this goes forward, what is our say going to have in the future? And talking about like the drugs to keep it out, yes, I realize that they could have the dogs searching, but a friend of mine, her daughter went through Teen Challenge in the cities, and when she got out, I allowed her in my house for a week. She stole money from me to go get drugs. She admitted to her mom later on that even in Teen Challenge down in the cities, they had drugs being passed around in the facility. If they can't keep it out of there, how are we going to keep it out here? I just don't see how we can have this. Sheriff Larson said that they're, 23 minutes out? Just this weekend, I had to call the ambulance twice for my dad because he went non-responsive on me. It took well over 15 minutes, if not close to that 20-minute mark, just to get an ambulance out there to help him. He had come out of it before they got there, but if he would have been laying there non-responsive for that long, or if somebody else in the facility needed treatment that needed it immediately, how do you get that within minutes instead of over 15? Thank you.
I'm Amanda Robinson, and I live about 1.5 miles north of Autumn Hills, or Antlers. I didn't plan on talking, so my concern is if this isn't really going to help a lot of Morrison County residents, we talk about staffing and all that good stuff. They say, you know, we're going to recruit them, we're going to pay so well. Well, there's no guarantees that that's going to happen. And then if you take away some of the good, you know, doctors, therapists, whatever that are of access to our residents, then where does that leave our residents for getting help? So that was probably my biggest concern, I guess.
My name is Tracy Sherping. I live 1.5 miles south or so, and I am not for it. I don't want it.
Hi, my name's Dean Robinson. I'm one of the only property land adjoining to this property. A lot of my things have been taken tonight, so I want to make sure I use my 3 minutes. So if I don't, somebody let me know, and I've been working on a little song and dance. I'm not as rehearsed as some people, so I'm just going to kind of work through some notes. I'm going to start with a little history on this game farm. This game farm, years ago, was kind of put in place in a similar process that we have here. And it's always been, this is all it's ever going to be. It'll never be more than this. If your neighborhood just accept it, that's all it'll ever be. Well, about every year or two, I get a letter in the mail stating, well, you know what? We changed our mind. We want to add a little bit more. A lot of us neighbors have just kind of kept their mouths quiet because the process at the beginning, the ones that remember, it was just literally, this is going to happen and you guys are going to deal with it. So here we are again proposing another, this is all it's going to be. It's not going to be anything more. Is it? This has happened 4 or 5 times. Now it's gonna be potentially still a game farm, and now we got a drug rehab center. Is that all it's gonna be? It's apparently years ago we let the cat out of the bag, and now it's just gonna keep growing. We're setting precedents here. We're setting precedents here in our county of agriculture land. It's not valuable for agriculture anymore. It's more valuable for businesses. It's more valuable for a lot of other things, but agricultural land has no real value if a better business or a better idea comes in. Well, last time I checked, you can live doing drugs, but you can't live without food. So we got to focus on keeping our agricultural land and property agricultural. Yeah, there are mom and pop businesses out there, but a lot of them live there, and they're smaller businesses, and they support the agricultural community. So does this fit into that community? I don't believe so. I got a few other kind of comments here that, we can do research, and I did some research, and I can find research to benefit the game farm, and I can find research that negatively affects the game farm. So the research stuff is kind of, to me, I've looked at it at both sides, and we can go both ways with numbers and research. These guys are professionals. They've been through this before. You got a bunch of country yahoos that are trying to go oppose this, that don't have the teaching, the education, the experience, the months of preparation. We got a month to deal with this. Another point, being I'm a property owner that adjoins this, I raise my children fairly wild, and I take great pride in that. That's why I put my children that far out in the country, so Mr. Larson doesn't have to deal with them. And other residents don't have to deal with them. My children on a regular basis are wandering in them woods connected to this facility. They're wandering this woods with guns. They love to hunt. Now I got to worry about my kid coming in contact with a potential person, criminal or not, who knows. It's not me to decide how bad they are or how bad they aren't. But now I got my children walking around the woods with a gun, coming in contact with up to 50 people every 30 to 40 days with some kind of bad background. Every 30 to 40 days, we're going to get 50 new people that have some kind of bad background every 30 to 40 days. So I get to sleep better at night knowing that my kids get up at 3 in the morning to go deer hunting or shoot a squirrel, and that wandering around with mentally ill goes hand in hand with drugs. People wandering around, going for spirit walks and whatnot. I would love my children to be able to do that too and not have to worry about who's in the woods. Do they need to be concerned? This facility is a great facility, I'm sure, but there's better places. There's better places that can accommodate this with infrastructure, police, sheriffs, septic, sewer and water. I mean, this isn't designed for this. I'm trying to think of a few other things. What's the irony of this is we're an agricultural area. We pride on that. The drug problem is getting bad. The answer to the drug problem is in the country. There's a set of values that are out in the country that our country is slowly losing. And for a facility to come in and give that to a group of people, but taking it from the people that live there, take that serenity, that honoring our neighbor, the leave me alone. Half my neighbors are great neighbors. I've never met them. And that's the way we plan on keeping it. That's why we live out there. A great neighbor is one you never see. Now I get to see 50 neighbors new every month. I'm trying to think of, here, another irony of this. I was watching a deal in the paper here reading a while back where I can't raise a single chicken in Little Falls. One chicken. One agricultural chicken. I cannot bring into town, and if it lays one egg or craps one little spot in the yard, boy, everybody in Little Falls is going to be in upraise. But I can take a business of this magnitude and plop it out where I should be raising chickens. I mean, I just can't get my brain wrapped around why this is here. Troy is a great guy. Troy has good points and good things, but this isn't the place for it. I just trying to let me scan here. You can yell if my 3 minutes is up, or I can work on my dance. But
You're at about 5 already.
I want to see the dance.
Dean, can I ask you one question?
Yep.
Okay, now this is just a question I'm throwing out there.
Okay.
Okay, I've had this, I've been thinking about, and you're on this topic of it, so I'm gonna ask you this question. I know you guys, everybody's against having this because it's in your neighborhood and this and that, okay? So there's supposedly gonna be all these bad people in this thing, okay? So they could come and hurt your kids, hurt your neighbors, hurt whatever. I understand that. That's what your guys' concern is. But then you're pushing that it should be in town, okay? So in a mile circle in town, how many residents does that affect?
Here's why I'm saying it's in town. I'm not doing the not in my backyard thing. I'm doing it because that's where the infrastructure is. That's where if there's a problem, Mr. Larson, the cops can be there in a minute, 2 minutes. I got a problem. I got to wrestle this guy down for 20 minutes while I'm waiting for him to happen. Am I going to wrestle him? I'm getting old. I'm getting fat. No, I'm going to end up having to shoot him. To be bold. If God forbids my kids come in contact, it's 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes for my kids to come tell me. It's 20 minutes before he gets out and responds. We're talking 40 minutes, starting to scratch at an hour before something can be done. And that's what I'm getting at, is the services aren't there to support this. There will be problems. I'm not saying there'll be a lot of them. There may be very few of them. But when there is, the response time cannot adequately get to it. We have areas in Morrison County that are zoned for businesses like this. That's what they were designed for. That's what they were zoned for. Now we're taking areas that aren't zoned and we're just changing them. We're setting precedents of whatever you want, whenever you want, just come to the meeting, ask for it. If you got a good enough story behind you and you got a good enough professional that's worded right, we'll put on some conditions. I learned all about these conditions with the game farm, and Troy has turned the game farm around. But I've learned about before Troy, conditions don't mean squat. You guys put conditions on, they aren't enforced. When I have come in and talked about the conditions, circled the things that aren't being enforced, said they can be seen from the road, you know what happens? Nothing. That's where a lot of these people give up, because the conditions don't mean nothing. You put conditions on, the same question I asked years ago, who's enforcing the conditions? Well, you are, as the people. The people obviously have no power to enforce them, and when you guys are done voting on it, and the commissioners are done voting on it, they wash their hands of it, and it's gone. So that's the conditions. The conditions are, to me, after dealing with the game farm for years, is we'll throw you a bone and be quiet. Here's a couple bones.
Okay, Dean, can you wrap it up? I gave you a lot of extra time.
Nope, that's fine. I can wrap it up right there. I can wrap it
Yeah.
up right there. I thank you guys for your
Yeah.
time. And, this isn't a personal attack on Troy or anything.
Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't get a chance to print out what I wrote up, but these are some stats I printed off. I'm Yvette Inez, and I'm along with Dean. We have 5 children, 4 at home. Our land is an adjacent to Autumn Antlers. And I just want to point out too, like, the people, from Ascension and Troy, I appreciate what you have provided. And I know you have the right intentions. But I also am not in favor of having this. I grew up on a farm, and I've learned the value of that, and I grew up in a large family. So having that, I'm a mother, and I'm also a nurse. I work as a sub-nurse in 3 school districts. And it's been about 18 years that I've been a nurse. 10 of those years have been in public health. So I've case managed. I've been out to homes where there have been those that have most likely been on drugs. And
So I got away from that setting just for my safety and others. And so now I like the fact that I can be in the schools, but even there, being a nurse, you're seeing the shortage of help. And, you know, they can't get enough help. They can't get enough help at the schools. They can't get enough help at the hospitals. And so looking at the medical end of things, these are some concerns I had, and, you know, they have been addressed. Let's see, just kind of going through my notes here. And yeah, this has been brought up as the emergency response time to the facility. And that's including for these residents, that's including the staff, emergency response for our families, our neighborhood. Emergency response can be 20 to 30 minutes. We've been through this as a family. Our barn burnt down. 3 fire departments had to show up to get the fire out. In the meantime, Dean was trying to put it out himself and trying to save animals along with neighbors. You just can't get there fast enough. So I guess, you know, from this one site, I try to pull up a lot of facts and research. So if I get too long, just cut me off, you have it there. So let's say somebody goes into a cardiac arrest. By 9 minutes, severe and permanent brain damage is likely. After 10, the chances of survival are low. Even if a person is resuscitated, 8 out of 10 will be in a coma and sustain some level of brain damage. Simply put, the longer the brain is deprived of oxygen, the worse the damage will be. And again, it takes at least 20 minutes to get help. And according to Medical News Today, detox. Symptoms can become severe and can be difficult to predict. It's unpredictable. Which people will develop life-threatening symptoms. Anyone having severe symptoms of alcohol withdrawal syndrome, such as seizures, hallucinations, or prolonged vomiting, needs immediate medical attention. In respect to the Euro setting, either way, addiction experts say there's a reason why treatment centers are in residential communities. Namely, the sober settings help in terms of acclimating addicts to the real world as part of their recovery process. Addicts have to learn to deal with the people who aren't fellow addicts, says psychiatrist David Reese. My second concern is this. What is the save client ratio in a rehab treatment, client to staff? And again, Ascension, they've had lots of experience in this. But we are at a point right now in our world where we do not have staff. We do not have the people to help. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the main principles of effective treatment include being readily available, addressing multiple needs of the client, not just their addiction, including dual diagnosis, regularly assessing and changing a client's treatment plan to meet their changing needs, which I'm sure is a big part of what they will be able to do. According to a REIT, it's capitalized, so I don't know what all recovery notes. A low client-to-staff ratio means that everyone, including the doctors, therapists, and general staff, does not feel overwhelmed by the number of clients they need to attend to and can instead more fully devote themselves to providing the time and personalized care that each client deserves. It also helps to see it that any potential emergencies, medical or otherwise, can be addressed and handled quickly and efficiently. The range of client-to-staff ratio at a high-quality rehab center tend to range between 1 and 3, up to 1 and 10. More than 1 to 10, you can expect to start experiencing a low level of individualized attention and care. And I've been through this in the medical setting. I've been in the acute setting. I've experienced what it feels like when you don't have enough help. The National Institute on Drug Abuse estimates the relapse rate among drug addicts to be 40 to 60%. Some addiction experts say rehab centers are partly to blame. In her 2013 book, Inside Rehab, Ann Fletcher, an award-winning health and medical writer who devoted several years to researching treatment for substance abuse, paints a picture of an industry that relies too much on one-size-fits-all methods and that often employs a workforce that's less than up to the job. There's a great deal of inconsistency in the quality of care provided across the programs, Fletcher writes. So not only do we have short staff, but also, how do we get that training in? This is specialized care. My third concern, this rehab is including clients that are coming in on a voluntary basis. The facility will also be unsecured. They can leave at any time. What kind of behaviors do we have to be concerned about that could potentially put others at risk, such as my children, our neighborhood, especially when they can leave on their own terms? So this
Yvette,
Isaac.
can you wrap it up?
Okay,
Yep.
sorry. There's a doctor that put on here how drug abuse affects society and you. Those who abuse drugs and alcohol are more likely to engage in high-risk taking behaviors, have a higher co-occurrence of mental disorders, and are more likely to be incarcerated for crimes committed than non-drug using individuals. The burden in terms of cost, trauma, and influence on the nation's youth is substantial. And one of those youth are my own children. And then I have medical complications, but I kind of went into that. So, I mean, it's a lot. It's just not meant to be there. Like others have said, it's better to just have it where it's set up for that setting and to have the emergency response there when they need it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Evans. I want to know how he figures he can, for the daycare aspect of it, how he can afford to fill spots without even meeting the clients that are coming in. And his workforce is what I want to know out of the whole deal. And I oppose this because it's going to affect everybody around us in the neighborhood. Thank you.
So I know I already talked, but I just thought of something else. Seeing how there's not going to be a lot of traffic, it has been mentioned that the clientele will have their own vehicles. What needs to be considered is the workers as well. Where are they planning to park all these vehicles? Where is this parking lot going to go? That's going to disturb the wild woods and stuff.
Is there any more public comment at this time?
My name is Brian Sherping, and we farm in this area, and my house is about 1.25 miles to 1.5 miles away from this proposed site. And I guess I am not for it, mainly because of the location. It took me 20 minutes to drive here tonight. And the way I also see it is, we have a conditional use permit for our farm. And I know that there is a turkey site right across the road, and I have not heard that brought up at all. If they impede in the setbacks with a commercial business right next to an existing feedlot. And I guess that's some of the concerns I have as a farmer myself, so. Thank you.
I have a really quick question. What were the detoxifying beds for that are put into the facility if it was a 30 to 40 day treatment center?
Any more public comment? Any more public comment? I'm gonna ask the third and final time, any more public comment? If not, we're gonna close this portion of meeting to public comment. Thank you all for your comments. So we'll try and answer some of these questions that we have. So Amy's got a tally of the questions, so I'm gonna have her go through them, and the appropriate people can answer them. Either she can answer them, or either Bill or Seth or Troy.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the first one was regarding the sanitary waste plan. And I'm gonna lump some of these together, just because I think we're gonna answer a lot of them together. So there was quite a few questions regarding sanitary waste plan and regarding the waste type, the waste strength, MPCA review of the septic system design. I can tell you from a zoning standpoint, that has already been something that I've discussed with the applicant. Understanding full good and well that we're gonna have a waste strength difference here. Understanding that when we have food, beverage, and lodging, just right out of the gate, we're gonna have a waste strength difference. It's not domestic waste at that point. Also then, when we do have treatment and medications, we're certainly gonna have a waste strength difference. That's where we do move into more of an industrial type of waste strength that is taken into consideration when it comes to the design of a system. And there's many ways to address that. MPCA oversight would happen when we actually have a system designed and when we actually have a facility that's going in. So MPCA wouldn't generally look at something unless they had a design. A design would not occur until the buildings were being planned and designed and the waste strength was known. So more often than not on these facilities, the permitting of it would be under the MPCA because of the number of gallons to treat and the waste strength. So there would be direct MPCA oversight, but it's just preliminary. It's too early to have MPCA involvement at this point. And I know that Troy has had some designers out there to take a look, and I think this would be a good time for the applicant to answer the questions as far as what preliminary work has been done in regards to waste strength and waste treatment.
Thank you. When we looked at these three buildings, we've already measured how many gallons per minute. We know how many gallons per minute our existing well can handle, and there is a possibility that we might be able to connect to our existing well. If it exceeds that well's capacity, which we don't know specifically, we would maybe need to drill one more well. The gallons per minute we're talking about, it would be under 130 gallons per minute. Put that in perspective, a agricultural well would be a 400 gallon per minute that you might see out in the field doing its circles. So relative to the water usage and all of those types of things, there's no issue with excessive use of water or any of those kinds of assertions. The second point I would make relative to the septic is that I've been developing larger properties for 20 years. There are numerous projects that I could refer to where you do rural well and septic in a commercial use, whether it's apartments or a hotel or any other type of use. It's not uncommon. We've already had a septic system pre-design already prepared and contemplating this very thing relative to the conversation with the chemicals. It's a matter of adding an additional tank, and as far as the cleaning supplies, we've been cleaning this place since the day we bought it. So guests come and go every single week, just like anybody's home. All of those are factored into and are reviewed. Any submittal for any septic would need to come to this county and would need to be reviewed before installed and would need to be reviewed by the MPCA, and all of that has been contemplated.
I think one of the questions basically on this waste thing alluded to was if there's gonna be any drug residue left in people's bodies, if they'd get it in contraband or whatever, how that'd be handled. I think that's what the question was directed toward, is it gonna pollute our ground and get in our groundwater and affect the neighborhood? I think that's what one of the questions.
No, in fact, that's contemplated in the system design, that folks that do have that issue, or if you have a site that has other, let's call it chemical issues, you're building a system that contemplates that, filters that, and delivers clean water to your drain field, or clean waste to filter through your drain field. So no, those are all contemplated in the design when you're bringing a facility like this and that design in for approval. It's no different than a commercial use, and somebody mentioned, are we doing this in another location? In fact, the Hibbing location is a rural location, not connected to city water and sewer. That's gonna be a 44-bed facility, and we'll have rural septic well, and it's a very common occurrence, and I am working with local companies to do that, who know the area. I don't know if they want me to mention their names here, though, so I will not do that.
Okay. Next.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the other kind of suite of questions regards the benefit, the direct benefit to Morrison County for a facility like this. The questions were about the assessment of the clientele as far as to guarantee health, safety, and welfare of Morrison County public. And also then if staffing might be pulled from other facilities that directly benefit Morrison County employee or Morrison County residents, how is that helping Morrison County residents with the issues that they have surrounding drug and alcohol dependency? And I don't know, this might be a question for Bill and or Seth, as far as, I think if you could give us some more detail on the assessment of the clientele coming in.
Sure. You know, prior to admission, there is a formal, complete biopsychosocial assessment as well as medical and psychiatric assessment. And in that process, we make a decision about appropriateness for fit to this particular program. And it is based on the results of all of that. There's a significant number of people that will not be appropriate for this particular program. And if they're seeking treatment, we would assist them to get to a program that would better serve them if they're not appropriate for ours. In addition to the pre-screening assessment, you know, we're doing continuous assessment so that we're monitoring and coordinating assessment and services and changes to treatment plans, treatment services, so that we're meeting real-time need of the person from both a stabilization and a therapeutic point of view. And I wanted to, although it's not related to this, I just wanted to throw in that typically in our programs, we're not disposing medications into the system. We have other legal approved methods to dispose of medications. It's a legitimate concern, but most programs today don't get rid of contraband, old medications, any other kind of substance and release it into the system. Water, sewer, toilet, anything. The other points I think Troy mentioned, you know, took really addressed well, but we just don't do that.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, can you also touch on staffing and what you anticipate? You know, you certainly have had experience with other facilities and the staffing of them. I think that was a theme with a lot of these comments and questions is, do you really feel that you're going to be able to fully staff this facility?
Yeah, I believe that we can. And I want to, just a slight deviation to one of the things that Troy said, or someone said at the beginning, that we're not looking to have our primary staff be new, untrained, and we're looking to attract seasoned professionals from both a medical, psychiatric, and psychosocial point of view. And I will tell you that it could be challenging to bring in the number of staff that we need, and we're exploring alternatives to how to make that more attractive, including using one of the bunkhouses for, staff, so if they have a long commute. But our experience has been that it's not unusual for the right job for people to commute hour and a half, 2 hours, for a job that they like. So we're still exploring the best ways to attract, seasoned staff. We will be using newer staff and training them, incorporating and bringing them onto the staff, but those would not be our frontline primary staff. At least we are anticipating that they would not.
Okay, then I think
Yeah,
that,
and
go ahead.
I was just going to add to that, that, in my experience in working in Owatonna, I would say 90% of our clinical staff, our clinical professionals came from the Twin Cities, over an hour away. I myself lived in the cities and did that commute every day. And that's really simply, done by creating a very attractive compensation and benefits program, package at the facility. And that's not just to attract the top end clinical staff. We have, several, at least a couple dozen support staff that will be attractive to the residents of Morrison County. Not to say that we want to steal from other organizations, but we plan on creating jobs, everything from maintenance to housekeeping to what's called a peer recovery support specialist, someone that wants to just help and be there to talk to patients. A multitude of non-professional, non-clinical staff as well, all at very, very attractive salaries. And the other thing too is salaries attractive enough to have people consider relocating to bring professionals into the community, into Morrison County, because as you said, as everyone knows, it is a beautiful place to live.
I think that goes right into the question as far as what is the client to staff ratio for the facility, and I would imagine your staffing level then would dictate what the population of patients would be.
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, you can only appropriately, when we decide that our clinician to patient ratio is 1 to 4, which is what we're looking at. And our staff to patient ratio would probably be about even, looking at hiring 40 to 50 people and having that many staff members, or having that many patients as well. So very equal. And what was said about that with the level, the quality of care diminishing as those ratios go up, 100% agree. And we pride ourselves on creating programs that have the appropriate ratios. There's nothing more inappropriate than giving care that's not good when someone comes to seek help for treatment. You want to make sure that they get the best care they possibly can when they're with you.
Okay, then one of the other questions regarding the demographics of who would be served would be, would there be services rendered to minors?
No.
No.
All right. Okay, and then some of the other questions were surrounding security and monitoring. One of the questions was, how will 300 plus acres be monitored to know what's going on in all areas of the facility and the property?
Sure. Typically, and as we would set up is that patients aren't just allowed to leave the building unaccompanied by staff and run around the 300 acres. Anytime, patients leave the building, they sign out. It's on a permission base. They have to explain what they're doing. If they're just going out into the parking area, if they're just, moving from the main building into one of the residential buildings, that's one thing. But there's not a thing that happens where a group of 10 patients decide to go out on a walk together without staff accompanying them. So staff would be present on any excursions outside the buildings themselves and the cluster of buildings that we have.
I think these two questions kind of go together. The question was how do you really keep drugs out of the program and your patients having access to them? And then also, if that is vetted very well and controlled, what is the need for the detox beds?
So the detox beds are for when people come into the program. So when someone comes to admit into the program, they're going to be assessed by the medical staff for the most appropriate level of care that we offer. We will be offering medical detox and residential treatment services, which as the state will call 3.0